Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. We got a treat for you. Radio host, you might know him from Coast to Coast AM, Richard Syrett is here to talk about a great tale. Tales from the rock and roll Twilight Zone. We are going to get to that in just a short time, but first we have to say hello to each and every one of you, including Tim Mothman and his goatee in the gold medal position, Race Fan with a silver, T-Bone with a bronze medal tonight. I'm excited about this one, guys. Very excited. Kitty Cattywack, how you doing? Mel WD40 is here, lubing us up for tonight's show because you always want to go into a show like this, lubed up. You're talking music. Thank you, Mel. Don't forget to give yourself a shot as well. Road Flare, how you doing? Trucker Andrew, nice to see you as we continue on with our roll call. Robert Lamoth, how you doing? And LS3V37, I'm going to say that's 7. Yeah. Welcome to SOR Chat. Thank you for coming here. All right. Race Fan, how you doing, my friend? T-Bone, my man. Always a pleasure to have you here. Frankie B is here. Frankie B will be signing autographs after the show. Line up to the left of the studio, if you don't mind, to the left of the studio. JP6 Gunner, thanks for coming on in. Mickey G at Stephanie Kenny Blankenship. Thank you for joining us tonight. Missouri Man, Jaquetta, Integrationing. Thank you all for being here. We love it that you are here. Shane Gord, good to see you, my friend. As we scroll on down on the roll call tonight, up next we have, let's see here. Well, we're going to keep scrolling here for a minute. Gear Jammer, how you doing? Nice to have you here. And who is next on our list? Walter Kochabinski. Nice to see you. And People Unite, welcome back to SOR. Appreciate you. Flubber Lane, nice to see you, my friend, as we continue on with our roll call. Undead Jed, Necessary Dialogue. Good to have you both here as we're going to have some fun tonight. Pam Harris, nice to see you. Al Gray over on Twitch did 99 Motley Curls, 200 pounds each. Yep, he did fantastic tonight. His arms are a little sore, but give him a break. 200 curls. Make that 99 curls at 200 pounds. All right, number 16 in your program tonight from Stockholm, Sweden, starting at center ice, Lars Jansson. Lars will be signing autographs after the show as well. Line up to the right of the studio, if you don't mind, to the right of the studio. Terry Hall and your beautiful mustache. How you doing, my friend? As we continue on with our roll call. Eva, nice to have you here. Honest Content, thank you for joining us as well. I'm Hardcore over on X, nice to see you. Candace Helfrich, looking lovely tonight. Dr. Bob, nice to see you. T-Bone, my man, thank you for kicking off the super chat tonight. We really appreciate your love and support of SOR on a nightly basis, so thank you very, very much. East Coast Turnaround on X, nice to see you. As we continue on with our roll call here. And Jerence Carter is here. Jerence Carter, nice to see you. Acuff, nice to have you here. Let's get the radio side going. Hello and welcome to the radio and podcast side of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. We have a great guest. Richard Syrett is here, radio host extraordinaire, author of Tales from the Rock and Roll Twilight Zone. We're going to get into this momentarily, but first we are here to say hello to each and every one of you, including Millennium, my man, on YouTube. We appreciate you coming on in. And who is next on our list? I think we are all caught up, to be blunt. Want to remind everybody the super chat is open. It's a wonderful way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis. And don't forget, you can shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. We do not have ugly swag, people. No ugly swag. You can wear our stuff out in public and actually be proud to wear it to more places than a garage sale, than to the farmyard, than to the paint shop. It's that nice. So go check it out, spacedoutradio.com/shop. Nothing ugly there. Now it's that time of the night where I ask all of you to do me a favor. Throw those horns up, everybody. Let's rock.
Are you ready to hear your mystic voice of the night?
It's time to wake up.
He's here. Shush. Be quiet. He's ready for you to listen. Let's point our ears to what's really happening now. We're together, friends. It's time for Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott.
From the mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out Bumblefoot, read the Newswire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Tonight's show is brought to you by Caribou Con. Get your tickets for Caribou Con September 18th through 20th, right here in the heart of British Columbia at cariboucon.com. We have an amazing show for you tonight. Popular radio host and author Richard Syrett is going to be here momentarily to talk about the weird and the strange when it comes to rock and roll and the Twilight Zone around it. Then in hour number 3, Swamp Dweller will join us for another creepy story. We will follow that up with Josh Rutledge filling in for a vacationing Grantavius Max on the UFO report to finish tonight's show off. So it's going to be a busy one. It's going to be a good one. So it's time to get going right now. Richard Syrett is one of Canada's most recognized broadcasters in the world of the unexplained, with more than 3 decades of experience as a radio host, producer, author, and storyteller. Since 2014, he has been a regular guest host on the legendary Coast to Coast AM, where he has interviewed some of the biggest names in paranormal research, ufology, conspiracy studies, and the supernatural. Richard is also the creator and host of the Richard Syrett's Strange Planet Show, a highly acclaimed podcast dedicated to exploring mysteries, conspiracies, paranormal phenomena, and the strange that comes out of our reality. In addition to radio success, if that isn't enough for this fine gentleman, Richard created, wrote, produced, and hosted 4 seasons of The Conspiracy Show, a documentary-style television series that aired internationally. He later created and hosted the critically acclaimed podcast, The Rock and Roll Twilight Zone. This guy dabbles in everything, and when you're that good, they call you Mr. Richard Syrett. Welcome to Spaced Out Radio, Richard. How are you?
Hey, Dave. I didn't realize I was so busy. I'm going to put my feet up and have a beer.
You totally should. You totally should. I mean, this is Bob McKenzie and Doug McKenzie territory, so I'll join you with that since you're the thinner one and I'm the chubbier one. So I guess that makes me Doug and you Bob.
Let's haul out the Coleman stove and slap on some back bacon. Yes.
Mm-hmm. We just need to find some stubbies. I don't even think the majority of our audience knows what a stubby is anymore, but that's okay. Thank you so much for coming on this show. It is always a pleasure to talk to a fellow broadcaster of amazing success, such as yourself, and your love of radio. What keeps you going?
Wow. Terrestrial radio and late night audiences are my lifeblood, really. I've worked my entire adult career in terrestrial radio, and much of that late night, particularly when I got behind the microphone for the first time in the early 2000s, and the kind of stuff that I wanted to talk about just doesn't work. And this just doesn't work during the drive home show. Imagine you're in somebody's car on their car radio, and they're carpooling 3 other people, and you're trying to compete with that. You just can't. And with the late night audience, you've got their undivided attention. But they're kind of a captive audience, if you will, and they are so dialed into what you're talking about. And I find late night audiences, they're avid readers. They live and breathe radio too. They're huge radio fans. And people say, terrestrial radio's on its deathbed. They've been saying that since, I think, the advent of moving pictures. And terrestrial radio, it may at some point become all digital. It's storytelling. Ultimately, it doesn't matter what the platform is, whether it's coming through the air or whether it's ones and zeros on your computer. It's storytelling. And I guess that more than anything is what draws me, to this industry is the storytelling and long form conversations, which again, you can't do in any other day part but late night radio.
There is a beautiful romanticism about late night radio, and that's what I love about it, is it allows people to turn off what they are hammered by from the time they wake up in the morning. It's politics, it's feelings, it's opinion, it's causing controversy now in all mediums aspect. Whereas when you get into the night, you're kind of done with that, and you could go into a whole array of variety, like your choice and my choice. We love the paranormal, supernatural topics, and people still eat that up, man.
Yeah, somewhere along the line, radio forgot to be enchanting, and it became very much a utility. And I understand utility is important. People need to know the traffic, and they want what is this, price of gold, and how much is gasoline, and what's the forecast this weekend, and give me the sports scores. I call that the utility. That's important. And local is important, but also radio once upon a time used to be enchanting, and radio can be a time machine, and it can be a carnival ride. It can be all those things. So I'd rather be on the midway than, getting down into that workaday reality. And it's important too, reporting on provincial budgets and the garbage strike and all that. I produced talk radio for years as well. So I understand that part of it, but I'm more interested in enchanting at this stage in my career.
Right? Me too. And it makes it so much more fun because I think the most important part about it is you really do, Richard, get to bond with your audience.
Oh yeah. It's immediate. It's not like television where, you work 16 hours a day and you sit on a set, mostly waiting around. And then maybe in 6 months, you might actually see, your work on the screen. Radio, it's immediate. The feedback is immediate, especially with call-ins. That's something else that terrestrial radio is doing away with. You don't hear too many call-in programs, at least up in Canada. Radio stations have, many of them, by and large, sort of turned their back on the audience. So they're talking at them, not with them. And I want to talk with them.
I want to ask you, why do you love these topics? What really gets you going about the paranormal or UFOs or Bigfoot lurking through the forest, or like we're going to talk about here, the mysteries and the legends of rock and roll?
To me, these are just ultimately the big questions. Now they may be dressed up in different costumes, with whether we're talking about UFOs, but when we're talking about UFOs, for example, what we're really talking about is, what are we? Who are we? How did we get here? What happens after we die? Are we alone in the universe? These are the big questions. Ultimately, they're the only ones that matter. Everything else is temporary. And so I think there is an innate need to ask these questions and to pursue these questions. And as I say, the next week's mayoral election might seem important at the time, and it is to a certain degree. But in 2 years or 4 years, that person is forgotten and we moved on to someone else and so forth. It ultimately really doesn't matter. So while, the stuff that we talk about, maybe some of our colleagues who do the drive home show or the morning show may kind of roll their eyes and so forth. Actually, Dave, we're the ones that are talking about the stuff that really matters.
You got that right. Have you ever had a strange occurrence or experience or sighting that really led you down this path? Because people know you from the other side of the microphone doing the interviewing. Many who have listened to you over the decades may not know if you have had strange occurrences.
You know what's strange about that is, and I've talked to a bunch of UFO witnesses or people who have had encounters, and they'll say how they may have been with a buddy. I have a friend who was driving. He was in Iran visiting his family. They were driving down this road, and they saw an immense craft come up out of the earth and then go back down into the earth. And he said he never talked about it with his parents after that. And that's kind of a common thing. People, they shut it down. I've never seen a UFO, but I had experiences earlier on in my life, and I just blanked them out for some reason. And then eventually, after years behind the microphone, I started to think, well, why am I talking about this? Has anything like that happened to me? I don't think so. And then, oh, wait a minute. Yes. When my father passed away, New Year's Eve, 1986, I was 22 years old. I was home from university for Christmas break. And several days after he died, he was laid to rest. And I was back in my old bedroom in my mother's house, my parents' house. And the rest of my family, my siblings were in the opposite room. I remember they were watching Saturday Night Live. They'd all come to gather around to be with my mother. And I fell asleep listening to them watching Saturday Night Live. And I woke up and my bed was up against the wall and I was facing the wall. I woke up and it was pitch black. And I saw some kind of specter coming through the bedroom door. And I thought, well, there's nobody here now except my mom. Everyone else has gone home. So I called out to her because it seemed to be kind of a diminutive figure. And I kept, rubbing my eyes thinking, am I seeing something and this figure was wearing a black sweatshirt with a white University of Victoria insignia. And because it was mine, it was my sweatshirt. I had one and the decal kind of glowed in the dark. So I was thinking, why is my mother wearing my sweatshirt? And then it came close to the edge of the bed and I wasn't afraid. I was just confused. So what do? I look over to the nightstand to see what time it is. This is how I know I wasn't dreaming. Had I been dreaming, my clock radio would have been where I thought it might be. It wasn't there because I remembered it's back in the dorm, back at Wilfrid Laurier University. I'm home for Christmas break. I didn't bring my clock radio with me. And this figure came closer and then I moved my arms out like this and they went right through this figure. This thing was just like fog. And I thought, okay, this is crazy. I'm just going to close my eyes. I put my head back down on my pillow, close my eyes. And when I open my eyes, this is not going to be here. This isn't real. I opened my eyes and now this figure was parallel to my body, hovering above me about maybe, 2 feet from my face. Its face looking into my face and then hovering above me lengthwise. I looked up into the face. It was me.
No.
I was looking at my doppelganger.
No.
And then I waved my arms again and it just dissipated and then got sucked up into a corner of the room, just like like that, and it was gone. And I never told anybody in my family for years and years and years. And one day I was in the car with my brother-in-law, and he opened up. He said one day he was a professor at a college, and he said one day driving, I came out to the parking lot, and he said, your dad was in the back seat. And by this time, my father had been gone for maybe 10 years. He said, your dad was in the back seat. And he said, I got upset. I said, why are you coming to see me? You know, I'm the son-in-law. Why aren't you coming to see the rest of your family and so forth? He said, I got in a shouting match with this ghost in the back seat. And then I told him finally, after 10 years, that, you know, a couple days after Dad died, the day we buried him, I saw my doppelganger, and I spoke to Rosemary Ellen Guiley. Do you remember Rosemary?
Yes. What a lovely lady she was.
I asked her about this. I said, what was that? And she said, that could have been your dad maybe coming back and in your form so as not to scare you. I don't know. That sort of conflicts with my faith. But something happened. I saw something and it looked like me. I'll call it my doppelganger. So that's one instance. I don't know if we have time for this, but it's actually this next thing that happened is the subject of the final chapter in the book, Tales from the Rock and Roll Twilight Zone. The book came about because originally it was supposed to be a terrestrial radio program called The Spirit of Rock.
Right.
And I had partnered with R. Gary Patterson, who was a rock historian, a musician, a teacher, who lived down in Oliver Springs, Tennessee, a little coal mining Civil War era town near Knoxville. And he used to come on my show when I was at CFRB in Toronto, and then later, and he was a regular on Coast to Coast, and he wrote sort of the definitive book about the whole Paul is dead legend. It was called The Walrus Was Paul, and he wrote some other books called Hellhounds on My Trail and Tales from the Rock and Roll Graveyard. So we got together and we decided we were going to try and produce this radio show talking about all of these legends and curses and mysterious deaths. And it was going to be called The Spirit of Rock. And we were going to cobble together, you know, kind of a network. We started in Knoxville. They were interested in taking the show. So Gary called me to tell me that the meeting with the manager at the GM at the station was on the Monday. So that was on a Wednesday night. He called me, and then he called me on a Friday night, leading into Memorial Day weekend. And it was dark out. I remember this distinctly. Now this is in late May. So it gets dark around maybe 8:30.
Yes.
It was pitch black. And I'm wandering around the house with the phone to my ear after Gary calls, and he's saying some strange things to me, like, Rich, you know what? You're a really cool guy. You're a really cool dad. And I thought, okay, this is just Gary being his usual affable kind of supportive self, trying to build me up. And then he said, you know what, Rich, we're a really big deal. I said, okay, Gary, that's great. You know, he's building us up because we're getting ready to launch this radio show. We've got a meeting with a general manager on Monday. So then I said, Gary, the reason he had called on that Friday night was to tell me the meeting was canceled on the Monday because it was Memorial Day. So it was going to be rescheduled. That's important. Anyway, so then I said to Gary, are you having a barbecue this Memorial Day weekend? When I think of Memorial Day, I think of parades and I think of, you know, veterans and I think of barbecues. And for the first time since I'd known Gary in maybe 10, 12 years, he got kind of curt with me. And this was the way the phone call ended. He said, there will be no barbecue. There will be no barbecue. And I thought, oh, wow, did I just step in a landmine or open up an old wound here or something? Is he having family problems? I said, okay, Gary, sorry. Anyway, the phone call ended at some point. That night, I normally listen to Coast AM every night. For the first time in forever, my lovely bride, the Mighty Aphrodite and I, we fell asleep. We didn't hear Coast to Coast. Dave Schrader was hosting that night. He had Chris Jericho on, the wrestler Chris Jericho,
yes,
who also had a podcast called Jericho Talks, I think it was. They were announcing that Gary had passed away that night. I missed it. I didn't hear it. because Chris Jericho was the last person to interview our Gary. He had gone down to Knoxville and talked about rock and roll legends and curses and so forth. I didn't hear it. I woke up the next morning, went out to the front porch to have my coffee, check my emails and my texts and so forth. There's Dave Schrader with a Facebook message saying, Richard, I know you were close to Gary. Thought you'd like to know Gary passed away yesterday. And I laughed. I said, give me a break. I just talked to him 10 hours ago. So I called Gary on the cell phone. I get the outgoing message, Gary, ha, ha, ha. People at Coast think you're dead. Give me a call. Of course, he never did. Anyways, it's a long story, but the short of it is I fly down to Knoxville for the funeral. I take a cab to Oak Ridge, get a hotel, and then from Oak Ridge, Tennessee, I take another cab to Oliver Springs. I go into the funeral home. There is his brother Michael standing in front of this beautiful blue stainless steel casket with Gary's Fender Stratocaster guitar, I guess it is, on a mount in front of him, and I'm choking up. I mean, this was just totally unexpected and so sudden. And I went up to Michael. I didn't want to tell Michael that I'd spoken to him that night, or that the night that he died. But I said, what time did Gary pass? He said, oh, it was about 5:00 in the afternoon. I said, wait a minute. I didn't say this out loud. I said, wait a minute. No, I spoke to Gary at 9, maybe 10 o'clock. No, he died around 5:00. It was sudden. And I said, one of the last conversations I had with your brother, Michael, I said, he got kind of curt with me. I asked him if he was having a barbecue this weekend, and he said, there'll be no barbecue. He got kind of sore at me. Any idea why he would say that? Michael looked so puzzled. He said, he said that to you? Why would he say that to you? He said, he spent the entire afternoon on Friday driving up and down the main street looking for a barbecue. He spent $500 on a brand new barbecue, and him and his nephew, Michael's son, spent the rest of the day trying to put that barbecue together on the back porch. There will be no barbecue.
Wow, dude. Wow.
So that haunts me. This happened in 2017. I should point out, on the 50th anniversary, Gary died on the 50th anniversary of the release of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band in Britain, May 26, 1967. He died May 26, 2017. Gary loved nothing more than to go through all of the Paul is dead death clues on the cover of Sgt. Pepper. So he had the last laugh.
My goodness. I mean, what was that like? Did he sound totally normal outside of there would be no barbecue? Did he sound totally normal? Because obviously you didn't realize, talking to him at 10 p.m. that he had died 4 hours earlier.
Aside from, I mean, he had that wonderful, warm Tennessee drawl. Always positive, always friendly, except, for that last bit, there'll be no barbecue. And then those other kind of odd little, they seemed out of place at the time. You're a really cool dad. Where did that come from? Rich, we're a really big deal. That seemed kind of strange. But what I failed to mention there was, as soon as I got the message from Dave Schrader and I called Gary and I didn't hear back, and then later I confirmed, the funeral home, I called them, and yes, they are Gary Rudolph Patterson was going to be lying. They were going to be handling the funeral. Anyway, I rushed upstairs. The mighty Aphrodite is just getting out of bed, and she looked at me like I'd seen a ghost, which I guess I had. And she said, "What's wrong?" I said, "Gary died." Without me prompting her, she said, "You were just talking to him last night." And I said, I thought I was.
Man.
Anyway, I went and she said, "Well, check the recents on your phone." No incoming calls, no outgoing calls on the Friday. There was a call from Gary on the Wednesday when he called me to tell me that the meeting was on, and but nothing. Nobody called me. Nobody loved me on that Friday. I didn't get one call. So there you go.
Richard Syrett is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. When we return, we're going to get into Tales from the Rock and Roll Twilight Zone. This is an amazing book you can buy on Amazon. Tales from the Rock and Roll Twilight Zone, eerie enigmas, and supernatural secrets from rock's darkest corners. We'll be back right after this. All right, there we go. Good start, Richard. Good start. Free Your Mind, how you doing? Nice to see you. The lovely and talented Cryptid Huntress, thank you for coming on in. And Richard, I'll tell you a freaky story. You can unmute if you're muted.
Okay.
Tell you a freaky story. So before I started sleeping with a CPAP, I would toss and turn all night. And I'm an ET abductee. And this one night I go into a dream. My dad and I are in that dream. My best friend and my cousin growing up are in that dream. And we're in this dark alley. And there's no lights on, no nothing except a street light down the alley a little ways. I said, all I remember is saying, hey guys, it's getting late. We should get going. Let me grab my phone. And it was one of those old style indestructible Nokia phones from the 1990s. And I never owned one of those. So I pick up the phone in this dream. And all of a sudden I start feeling the gravitational pull that a lot of abductees get before being sucked up into wherever they're going. And I went, oh God, here we go. I didn't want to go today. And I drop the phone and it makes a bang. Okay. So I went to bed after the show about 1 o'clock in the morning. I wake up next. It's 2:09 a.m. and I'm laying in the middle of my bed facing opposite of my window. And I realize that every piece of fear in me, I know there's two alien grays standing behind me. And I start getting mad at myself saying, this is what you do for a living. Look over, look behind you, see them. And as I started to turn over, there's this white flash of light out my window, and boom, they're gone. So now that I'm awake, I got to go to the bathroom. The second my feet hit the floor, I absolutely froze shivering. Wow. And I ran to the bathroom. My teeth were chattering, do my thing. I'm like, dude, I got to have a shower. I am frozen. Right. So I'm trying to speed it up because we only got a couple minutes. And so I go back to bed, wake up, and I feel like something has changed inside of me. I'm feeling better than I've ever felt before. I call up my dad that morning. My dad's a real 5 senses Alberta boy. And I said, hey, Dad, how did you sleep last night? Because he lives near Vancouver. All right. And I'm up here in the Caribou region of BC. And so he's about 4.5 hours away from me. I said, how'd you sleep last night, Dad? He goes, oh, not too bad. I woke up a couple of times, but, I said, well, what time did you wake up? He goes, 7:15 this morning. I said, no, in the middle of the night. What time do you wake up? He goes, it was after 2:05. And remember, I woke up at 2:09. I said, why did you wake up? He goes, there was a bang on the floor and I went looking for it this morning and I couldn't find it. Nothing had dropped on the floor. It doesn't make sense.
Oh my gosh.
And I said, well, what woke after the bang? What happened? He goes, I was really, really cold, shivering cold.
Come on.
So I went and grabbed another blanket to throw on. I said, Dad, how do you feel this morning? And he goes, son, my dad has COPD. He goes, son, this is the first morning in 2 years that I have not hacked and wheezed, breathing, getting up in the morning.
Wow.
Yeah.
How do you, any theories as to what that's all about? I mean, were you both taken?
I believe that's what I believe happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we were talking about Preston Dennett earlier off the air, and Preston has written I think an entire volume about that, right? Healing aboard UFOs.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. Remarkable. You and I should write a book together, Dave. We have, between the two of us, we have.
Dude, let's do it. I'm game. I'm game. Archon, how you doing? Philip Blair, nice to see you. Good morning to you. Who else is here? Govbuster, welcome back. And we're coming back in about 45 seconds, Richard. And man, we're going to continue to have the fun here. Brent Andre Fleury, how are you, Flower? Nice to see you. And let's see. Bill Sardellis, nice to see you. You got to write this name down, Richard. Jessica Jones. She's in our chat room right now as the Cryptid Huntress. This lady is one of the best cryptid hunters that I've ever met.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'll make
Jessica
sure that,
Jones.
yeah, we'll talk about her
All right.
sometime, but you got to get her on your show. Yeah.
I'm still fascinated by Undead Jed.
Right. Mama
Love that hand.
Catherine, mwah, I love you, my dear. I hope your day has gotten a little bit better, and love you, dear. Hillbilly Herb, how are you? And here we go. Here comes the second half hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. We love having you here joining us wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth as we prepare for Richard Syrett and Tales from the Rock and Roll Twilight Zone coming up right after this. But first, we want to remind you that if you missed portions of this show or others, you can always check out our free archives on YouTube or any major podcast network like Spotify or iTunes. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Richard, I got to tell you a rock and roll story that I have. The gentleman who does our music, you're very familiar with music, gentleman named Ron Bumblefoot Thal, played with Guns N' Roses for about 9-10 years, played in Sons of Apollo, one of the best prog guitarists in the world as we speak. So a few years ago, Sons of Apollo, which was a mega band, and I'm trying to think, Mike Portnoy was on the drums and Billy Sheehan on bass, and Ron was the lead guitarist. I forget who the singer and the keyboardists were right now, but either way, they're playing in Plovdiv in the Czech Republic in a stadium that is 15. No, I think it was made in like 1500s. They start playing Comfortably Numb by Pink Floyd. And Ron says the keyboardist, who always wore his sunglasses on top of his head when it got dark, all of a sudden got slapped in the head by something, and his sunglasses went flying down into a crack on the stage, and he never found them again. Then, for Bumblefoot, he has never, ever fallen on stage before. And he carries around, the guy's maybe 115 pounds, but he carries around a 30-pound double neck guitar. And he is playing the guitar solo for Comfortably Numb. And he said on this show, he goes, Dave, God is my witness. He goes, something on that stage pushed me down. And he said, I've never fallen on stage. I've never tripped. I've been very lucky. He goes, but something shoved me down that night. And I still don't know what it is.
Wow. That's a great story.
Yeah. So if you ever do a part 2 to Tales from the Twilight Zone or the Rock and Roll Twilight Zone, you got to get that story.
I'd love to get that story. Yeah.
Tell me about this book.
All right. So back in 2018, so after Gary died, the dream of this terrestrial radio show sort of died with him. But after a certain point, I decided, okay, I'm going to carry on. I think that's what Gary would want. And so I decided to do it as a podcast. So the Spirit of Rock became the Rock and Roll Twilight Zone. And I partnered with Chris Jericho, who had a podcast. He was the last person to interview Gary before he died. I just reached out to Chris quickly by email. He said, I'm coming to Toronto. I'm going to be at the Royal York Hotel on such and such a date. Meet me there. So we met, and over a couple of glasses of Grey Goose, I gave him the pitch, and he absolutely loved it. And he said, but I don't like the name Spirit of Rock. He said, what else you got? And just off the top of my head, I just said, what about, I don't know, Rock and Roll Twilight Zone? He goes, that's it. Because he said it has to, the title should say what the show is about. Spirit of Rock is too cute, too nebulous. So that was the podcast, and we produced it sort of documentary style. I had a great team, Jamie Watson, who does amazing voice work. You've probably heard him in lots of, cartoons and different things. He was kind of he did the funny little interstitials and the liners and the so forth. And Dave Whalen produced it, and we did 40 episodes. It was a lot of work, but I'm very proud of it. But after about, a year, 40 episodes, I was spent. I was done. So it sat there, and Westwood One took it down, so it wasn't available anymore, and I had to decide what to do with it. And I thought, well, I'll save it for my premium subscribers for Strange Planet. They get 2 free episodes or premium episodes a month. And in the meantime, people have been asking me to write a book for years, probably a decade. And I thought, what am I going to write about? And then I thought about the Rock and Roll Twilight Zone. So I picked 16 out of the 40. Initially, what I did was I transcribed those podcast episodes. And then I thought, well, I don't want it just to be a transcription. That's kind of lazy. So I preserved all the interviews, and I leaned on some great researchers and rock journalists, and like Joel Selvin from the San Francisco Chronicle is in there, and others. And then I just kind of rewrote the narration and gave it more of a literary polish, I suppose. And there it is. And at the end of each chapter, there's a QR code, and you can scan the code and then listen to the episode of the Rock and Roll Twilight Zone that inspired the chapter. And only by buying the book can you hear the podcast episodes, because it's not available anywhere at the moment. So it's 4 sections. Section 1 is all about the Beatles enigma. Section 2 is called Cursed Chords, and we get into Robert Johnson at the Crossroads, and Leonard Skinner and the Omen, and Altamont, the free Rolling Stone concert at the Speedway in 1969. Then it went horribly, horribly wrong. And Aleister Crowley's or Jimmy Page's obsession with Aleister Crowley, and what happened at Boleskine House on the shores of Loch Ness, where Aleister Crowley performed this Abramelin operation to summon some entity through a portal. He never bound the spirits properly. Jimmy Page bought the house, and of course we know all of the tragedy that beset that band. The last section is called Killer Riffs, and I reopened the case files of Brian Jones, who died in 1969, supposedly of accidental drowning, misadventure, they called it. Elvis Presley, Jimi Hendrix, Elvis Presley, and Kurt Cobain. And then the final section is it's called Echoes After the Applause, and it's about premonitions and dreams, like the Buddy Holly plane crash. The last chapter is my experience, that fateful phone call from R. Gary Patterson from Beyond the Grave.
My goodness. Talk about an entertaining book, man.
I hope so. I hope people like it.
I am absolutely fascinated with the story of the Crossroads. And it still makes me wonder each and every time why it's so hard to find somebody to interview about that story. People will dabble in it, but it just doesn't seem like there's many people out there, Richard, that have gone hardcore researching into one of rock and roll's biggest legends.
Yeah, it is seminal because, I mean, we're talking about the Delta Blues. We're talking about the 1930s. So it's not rock, but it informed rock. Robert Johnson's playing and his singing and his lyrics informed, the Allman Brothers and Eric Clapton and many others. And Robert Johnson is sometimes referred to as sort of the grandfather, not the king of rock and roll. That crown, of course, belongs to, well, probably should be Chuck Berry, but the mantle was taken by Elvis, who was also an enormous talent. But Robert Johnson is probably the grandfather of rock. And but the legend of the Crossroads really is ancient. I mean, it goes all the way back to ancient Greece. This idea of arriving at a crossroads, and in the South, they refer to the devil as Old Scratch. So on a moonless night, sometime in the 1930s, and things are getting a little through the past. We're talking almost 100 years. things are getting a little foggy now about what actually happened and who said what to whom and so forth, and the way things transpired. But Robert Johnson was the son of a sharecropper, and the only way out in those days was, to become a bluesman and play in the gin joints and so forth. And then you had all the gin you could drink and all the women you wanted, and it was good times, right? So, but the problem was Robert Johnson was incredibly mediocre, and that's being kind. But he loved to hang around real great bluesmen, primarily a guy by the name of Son House. And Son House kind of tolerated this skinny kid, Robert Johnson. Maybe he felt sorry for him. I don't know. And he would try and show him a few licks and so forth, but Robert Johnson could not play. And then Robert Johnson disappeared for about a year. Nobody heard him. No one knew what happened. There were rumors that he had left town. In the meantime, we have this legend that, again, on a moonless night, Robert Johnson meets Old Scratch at the crossroads and makes the legendary deal with the devil. And that he signed and received instruction from the devil on how to play in the cemeteries around Clarksdale, Mississippi. And he shows up again a year later, and Son House and his crew are out in the parking lot of one of these gin joints having a smoke break between sets. And all of a sudden they hear the most incredible guitar work they've ever heard. They rush back in, and there on the stage, with his back turned to the audience, as if he was hiding this dark craft, perhaps, was Robert Johnson playing these otherworldly guitar licks and chords, and they couldn't believe it. They couldn't believe it. In a year, he turns into this annoying, mediocre, skinny kid, and now he is the king of the Delta blues. This is impossible. Now, Robert Johnson never, ever claimed that he made a deal with the devil. I mean, he sang about it. He sort of alluded to it. He talked about hellhounds on his trail and so forth. He talked about the crossroads, but he never really said, yes, I made a deal with the devil. He never denied it, but he never said that that's what happened. Son House, on the other hand, was convinced that Robert Johnson made a deal with the devil, and many other people were. Now, at a certain point, there's a rule, an unwritten rule, but everybody knows it. When you go into one of these gin joints, you never accept a swig from an open bottle that someone offers you. Because Robert Johnson was a bit of, how should I put it, a player. And they used to refer to them as swordsmen. He was quite a swordsman. And it is believed that the husband, a jealous husband or boyfriend, passed Robert Johnson that open bottle, and he drank from it, and it was perhaps laced with arsenic or strychnine. And as legend has it, for the next 2 nights, Robert Johnson died a slow and painful death on his knees, begging for mercy and howling like a hellhound. So
Really?
that's sort of the legend of the crossroads. Now, there's kind of an addendum to that, and this didn't make it into the book, but I tried to talk with a gentleman, an author by the name of Matt Swain, about...
I know Matt.
You know Matt. We tried to talk about this on Coast to Coast, and we got knocked off the air. I was doing this show from the affiliate station here in Toronto at the time, CFRB. I was in their studio, but back in Sherman Oaks, where Coast to Coast studios are, which is in LA, the internet and the whole building went down or something. And so I got knocked off the air in the midst of talking about Robert Johnson. And about an hour later, they got everything back up and running and so forth. And we'd moved on to the next guest by that time. Prior to that, I believe it might have been before, but in and around the same time, I'm doing another interview, this time for my podcast, and I'm recording it over, in those days, it was over the phone into some sort of a phone coupler system anyway, and then into my Adobe Audition. And I recorded, and I think it was Matt Swain again, and we were talking about the Robert Johnson story. And I looked at the waveform, everything looked great, it sounded great. said goodbye to Matt, went to sit down maybe a couple hours later to package it and edit it. It was just gobbledygook. It was almost like it was playing in reverse, but not quite. It was just unintelligible gobbledygook, the entire interview. I had to call up Matt and say, Matt, we got to do this again. Another time, when I was at Zoomer Radio in Toronto doing the conspiracy show, obviously before he passed, Gary Patterson came on to talk about it. Gary was on the phone, ready to come on the air, and I'm introducing him, and my producer, locks him in and brings up his pot on the channel and so forth. And I can hear Gary, but he can't hear me. And I'm saying, Gary, are you there? Are you there? And this went on for about 10 minutes. And then finally, we took a commercial break. We came back, and Gary said something. It was almost like foreshadowing. He said, we finally established contact on the radio. And I said, I could hear you, but you couldn't hear me. He said, yeah, I thought maybe you put me in a box. And I'm thinking, years later, put me in a box. Gary passes away, and I go to see him, and there he is in this beautiful blue casket. Yeah, he got put in a box. So 3 occasions we tried to talk about the Crossroads and Robert Johnson on the air, and each time something went wrong. Are we still on the air?
Yeah, we are. I was actually just checking. So
the curse is broken.
Right. It's very much an interesting story, because if you go down that road, I mean, now all of a sudden in their 80s, we hear the Rolling Stones are going to be going into the studio to make another album, but Paul McCartney's going to be helping them out. And there's always been that legend that the Stones have to keep touring because they made a deal with the devil as well. I mean, there are so many stories that are impacted like that in rock music.
Yeah, it is one of the enduring legends. And as I say, it predates rock and roll. It predates probably the Delta blues. I can't affix an exact date. I'm sure if we look back, maybe one of these great British writers like John Donne or Dryden or someone was writing about, a deal with the devil. But it makes sense in the world of rock, given the circles that these people, the people that orbit these stars, and the pressures that they have from the record companies and so forth to maybe brand themselves as these anti-establishment, anti-everything, anti-authority, anti-religion, and maybe dabble a little bit in the occult. Listen, you can't be a rock and roller if you're going to church twice on Sunday. You got to put Baphomet on your album. Come on, man, the kids are gonna love it. You got to put Baphomet on your album, even if you don't believe it. I am a Greek Orthodox Christian. I do believe in an unseen world. I believe in an angelic realm. I believe in demons, and I believe even if you don't take it seriously necessarily, if you start dabbling in it and talking about it, sometimes something answers that door. Sometimes something walks through that door, and who am I to say that the Rolling Stones didn't make some sort of a wager? Another example is he just finally decided at 93 to stop touring. The Jersey Boys, help me out. Something in the Four Seasons. What's his name? He's 93 anyway, and he's still performing. And people are saying, why is he doing this? Who is pressuring him to do this? I mean, does he owe the mob money? I don't know. Or did he make a deal with the devil? And the moment he stops touring, that's it. He's done. Hard to say.
It makes you wonder. It makes you wonder that you get Ronnie James Dio being blamed for throwing the devil's horns up, where he's like, no, my grandmother used to do that to me as an I love you statement, and so you wonder, was that the devil that made him throw the horns up, or was it Was it his grandmother, him saying, I love you on camera?
There you go. Frankie Valli in the Four Seasons. You can see him on Instagram. He's just like, he's like a corpse. Sorry, but on stage, and he can still sing. He's 93. He's decided that's it. I'm done. Finally. Anyway, sorry about that. Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah, I mean, you see a lot of people throwing, what do they call them? Throwing signs, hand signs, and so forth, and the Illuminati, flashing Illuminati signs, and so forth. Some of that, I think, is just marketing. They're trying to, present themselves as we're bad boys. But some of them, I think, like Jimmy Page, really believed and was a devotee of Aleister Crowley, and I think that got him and the band into a lot of trouble.
That one is kind of interesting because, I mean, if you want to continue that saga, it leads to Kurt Hammett from Metallica.
Well, you better tell that story because, my sweet spot for sort of classic rock starts in 1966 with Revolver and probably ends in 1977 with Frampton Comes Alive. So
right.
anything after that, with a few exceptions, I am not well versed in. What happened to this gentleman in Metallica?
Well, nothing has happened to him, but he bought Jimmy Page's house. He's really into the cult. If you look at his lead guitars, many of them have Ouija boards on it. He is very much into the addiction of learning about Aleister Crowley and Jimmy Page and the addiction to the occult part of everything. So
Right.
It's just very, very interesting to see how he has kind of taken that Jimmy Page love of the occult and kind of made it into his own in buying different guitars of Jimmy Page's and playing with them. Like, he just absolutely idolizes everything Jimmy Page had done. But I mean, it's very interesting because, I mean, look, everybody has a hero,
Yeah.
Everybody has a hero, but on the flip side, going down that same path of sharing the heavy metal love, the fascination with Crowley and all of his kind of interests of the occult, it just seems to continue band after band, cycle after cycle. And I'm sure there'll be somebody after Kirk Hammett.
So when you say that he bought Jimmy Page's house, do you mean he bought the house that Jimmy Page owned that was also owned by Aleister Crowley, as in Boleskine
Yes.
House? So he bought Boleskine House, which is interesting because it's now just for the first time in years, it's open to the public because it was raised by fire a number of times, I think. So that's interesting. He bought the house. Well, I mean,
I'm just confirming that.
Okay.
I'm just confirming that.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Interesting.
He did not buy it, the Boleskine house. He did buy one other of Jimmy Page's houses, though.
All right. Still. Yeah. I mean, Jimmy Page was so enthralled with Aleister Crowley that he opened up a bookshop in London. I think it was called Nexus or Omni or something. I can't remember the name of the bookstore, but he just collected anything Crowley related, all his grimoires, and he had like first editions and he had original copies and things. And as legend has it, Crowley went to Boleskine House because it was isolated. He was on the southeast shore of Loch Ness, and he wanted to perform what was called the Abramelin operation, which involved summoning certain, well, he wouldn't have called them demons. I'll call them demons. But there's kind of a hierarchy. There's like the top, not Satan himself, but and I think he referred to it as a guardian angel. But before you summon the number one guy, there's like maybe 20 other ones that you have to summon first. And underneath them, there's like 300. And and this Abramelin operation takes months and months and months. And it involves fasting and cleansing and deep meditation and preparation and so forth. And that's why he chose Boleskine House. So he gets into this Abramelin operation. He starts summoning these spirits, and the lesser ones you're supposed to bind. So they're supposed to sort of come through the portal or whatever you open with this magic and then bind them. Well, maybe when we come back, we can discuss. But Aleister Crowley got called away suddenly to Paris. He forgot to bind them. Problem.
Richard Syrett, great book on Amazon. Tales from the Rock and Roll Twilight Zone. We'll get into Paul McCartney, Jimi Hendrix, and more next. This is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott. Such a great topic, my friend. Such a great topic.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
We're going to play a video here for about 5 minutes, then we'll get back, okay?
Cool.
Our merch is Bigfoot approved. We have t-shirts, we have mugs, we have hoodies, we have socks, we have hats, we have stickers, and so much more. Whatever you're looking for, we have you covered. Why just be a fan of the paranormal when you can buy Spaced Out Radio merch and look the part? Our merch ain't ugly, folks. Check out the Spaced Out Radio store. Find the link in the description below.
Lurking within the forested region of the 108-mile ranch, where the worlds of the normal and paranormal collide. CaribouCon is waiting for you, bringing together a panel of renowned experts in the paranormal, cryptid research, and UFO phenomena fields. Get ready for a spine-tingling weekend in the heart of British Columbia. Enjoy fascinating discussions, presentations, tours of local haunted areas, and skywatching. Learn from investigators, authors, and enthusiasts who explore everything from ghost hunting techniques to sightings of Sasquatch and beyond. Whether you're a seasoned paranormal researcher or just love a good spooky story, this is your chance to connect with fellow enthusiasts in one of BC's most mysterious areas. Tickets are on sale now. Grab yours before they're gone. Visit cariboucon.com for details, tickets, and updates.
Are you ready to dive into the weird and wonderful world of cryptids, cartoons, and chaos? Meet Dirty Filth, Spaced Out Radio's resident cartoonist and master of the mysterious. Every Saturday at 2 p.m. Pacific, join him live on the Spaced Out Radio YouTube channel for Cryptid Cartoons with Dirty Filth, a hilarious hour where he sketches bizarre beasts, shares mind-bending stories, and battles his mischievous cats. Whether you're a UFO enthusiast, paranormal fan, or just love quirky art, Dirty Filth filters the universe through his unique lens, creating cartoons that capture the strange, dark, and supernatural. Follow Dirty Filth on X at Filth1 or Facebook at Dear Filth for more filthy fun. Find his link in the description below.
Spaced Out Radio wants to hear from you. We love our community, and your voice truly matters. Drop a comment after every show and let us know what you thought. Agree with our guests? Tell us why. Disagree? We want to hear that too. We read every single comment. Jump into the live chat during the broadcast and be part of the conversation in real time. Got a killer topic idea? Your suggestions help shape the show. And if you want to take it even further, join our Patreon for bonus content and direct feedback opportunities with Dave and the team. This is your show as much as it is ours. Whether you're a longtime listener or brand new, we want your thoughts, your questions, and your ideas. And let's keep building this incredible community together. Spaced Out Radio, where the conversation never ends. What are you waiting for? We're listening.
with 5 explorable Gold Rush era buildings said to be home to spirits of a time forgotten. The 108-mile heritage site in the heart of BC's Caribou region offers a unique opportunity for thrill seekers and history buffs. For an evening of historical fun, step into our guided ghost tours, where spine-chilling stories of Gold Rush legends and unexplained encounters come alive. For those craving even more, inquire with us about conducting a hands-on paranormal investigation of your own. And if you're truly brave, book our haunted sleepovers. Spend the night at our B&B inside the McNeil House to truly experience this historical landmark and its ghostly secrets firsthand. For booking or inquiries, go to haunted108.com.
All right, we got Richard back, and we want to say thank you to T-Bone ×2 and Pam Harris for the awesome super chats. We greatly appreciate your love and support. We'll try and sneak in some questions after the next half hour, but we're having a good time here, so keep them up. Keep them up. I know. It's a good time. And we're coming back in 10 seconds, Richard. Five seconds. Here we go. Welcome to hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Our guest, Richard Syrett from Coast to Coast AM. He's an author, radio host, and he's got a great book, The Tales from the Rock and Roll Twilight Zone, which can be found on Amazon. We're going to get into that here momentarily. But first, I want to say hello to all of you listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network, our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. You can follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Darain. Darain is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Let's bring in our guest, Richard Syrett. Tales from the Rock and Roll Twilight Zone is his book. It can be found on Amazon right now. Richard, this is such an intriguing topic. I'm so glad you wrote it.
Oh, thank you. I got to say, not to be too boastful, I'm kind of proud of it for my first effort. And I think, it's such a rich vein to be mined. Can't guarantee it, but there may very well be, depending on, if people enjoy the book and buy the book. There may be a volume 2. That'll be up to my publisher, I guess, which is Trine Day, TrineDay, Trine Day. Terrific people at Trine Day. There's certainly enough. This thing has legs, let's say. There could be 3, 4, 5 volumes, and I probably would not exhaust the topic.
Jimi Hendrix is one of the greatest rock and roll guitarists, if not the greatest ever to play. We look at Jimi Hendrix as someone who has been around the music scene for decades, which in memory he has, in music he has, but realistically, live touring and playing, 2.5 years. That's all we got from this incredible legend. What's strange about him? What did you notice?
Well, it should be noted, actually, that many people may not be aware, but before Jimi Hendrix was discovered in Greenwich Village at Café Wa and then was taken to England, where he became a star first, they didn't quite get him in the U.S. initially, but he went to London. It was Chaz Chandler, the bass player for the Animals, discovered Jimmy playing at Café Wa and said, I got to get you to London and hook you up with some, record producers and so forth. But before that, he was performing in the sort of the backup band for Little Richard. And can you imagine? I mean, as flamboyant as Richard Penniman was, Little Richard, to have a guy like Jimi Hendrix playing guitar. I mean, you cannot have two blazing stars like that surviving in one band. But as legend has it, one night, it was at the Apollo Theater, there was just a who's who of Black American artists and groups performing at the Apollo Theater for a benefit, including Little Richard. Well, there were so many bands, and this comes to me from the late Tappy James Wright, who was a roadie for Jimi Hendrix and the Animals, and I believe Ike and Tina Turner and many others. So James Tappy Wright, I'll call him Tappy, tells me that he's kind of helping run this benefit concert at the Apollo, but they're running overtime because some of these bands are taking too long to get on stage, do their couple numbers, and get off. Along comes Little Richard, and he was such a showboat and a showman, and he plays his two songs, and then he says to the audience, "They want me to get off stage. Do you want to hear more?" And of course, the audience erupts, "Yes, more and more." So he starts, going into a third song. Tappy Wright makes the decision, we're going to pull the cord. He pulls the cord on the microphone or whatever and all the amps and so forth, and Little Richard is fit to be tied. He runs after Tappy Wright and dives at him, and Tappy says, "He was about to scratch my eyes out." He says, "Suddenly, this guy from behind me with this big afro pulls Little Richard off me. Otherwise, he would have, ripped my face apart." He turns around, and that was Jimi Hendrix. That was his introduction to Jimi Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix pulled Little Richard off of Tappy Wright to prevent him from throttling him for giving them the big hook at the Apollo Theater. But to understand what happened to Jimi Hendrix, in part, you have to understand who he was controlled by, and his manager was a guy by the name of Mike Jeffrey. Mike Jeffrey was rumored to have been former MI6. He was a killer, and he took part in secret operations during the Suez Crisis in 1956. It was, he would tell people that he could, one of these guys, "I can kill you with my little finger." Well, people believed him. He was intimidating, and he controlled Jimi Hendrix, and he worked him to death. It's almost classic MK Ultra type programming. You wear somebody down, and then what would happen is Mike Jeffrey would arrange for Jimmy to get into trouble, and then he would come in and rescue him. So there's a celebrated incident where Jimmy's in New York, and he's kidnapped by the mob, and they're demanding this huge amount of money from Mike Jeffrey. Well, little did Jimmy know at the time, Mike Jeffrey had arranged for the kidnapping, so that Mike Jeffrey then gets his buddy to get his bigger goons to come over from New Jersey, bust into this apartment, surprised they knew where they were holding him, and rescue Jimi Hendrix. And Jimmy's so grateful. "Oh, Mike, you saved me. You saved me." Well, he did this time and time again. This is the way Mike Jeffrey controlled Jimi Hendrix. He said, if you get rid of me, Jimmy, you're done. You're finished. No one's going to be able to save you like I can save you. It happened at the Toronto International Airport in, I think it was in early 1970. Jimmy got busted for heroin. Jimmy had kicked heroin months and months, maybe even years before that. It's rumored, we can't prove this, Jimi Hendrix or Mike Jeffrey put all that drug paraphernalia in Jimmy's luggage. And then just as they're about to slam the door on Jimi Hendrix in prison, in comes Mike Jeffrey, like a knight on a shining armor. And he's Mr. Fix-It. Now, this is a guy with intelligence connections, big time intelligence connections. Otherwise, how would he have been able to pull something like that off? He got Jimi Hendrix off the drug charge. Otherwise, he would have languished in prison for decades. So this is Mike Jeffrey, the way he operated. So Mike Jeffrey also was familiar with a form of, torture, but can also be used to kill someone. We know about it now as waterboarding. It's a particular technique of holding someone down, holding their mouth open and their nose open and pouring liquid. In this case, it was probably red wine right into Jimmy's lungs while he was incapacitated with barbiturates at that Harrowsmith apartment where he was staying with Monica Danneman just before the Isle of Wight festival. So I've given, maybe my publisher will say, you're giving too much away, but I hate when guests come on and say, well, you got to read the book. I'm confident people will, there's lots in there, but I'm giving some stuff away, and that's fine. Mike Jeffrey, I believe, murdered or arranged to have Jimi Hendrix murdered because Jimi Hendrix's contract with Mike Jeffrey was expiring. And here's another common thread you'll find, whether we're talking about Colonel Tom Parker or other managers. Mike Jeffrey was indebted to the mob for millions. He was about to lose his cash cow. He had a life insurance policy on Jimi Hendrix. The rest is a sad tale. Oh, I can't hear you. I think I've lost you.
There we go.
There
What
you
about
are.
that's incredible. What about Kurt Cobain?
Yeah, the other common thread in this section of the book is what I call a rush to judgment. We see this so often. Oh, young rock star, dabbled in drugs, must have been a suicide. I'll give you before I get into Kurt Cobain, this isn't in the book. It didn't make it into the book, but I did an episode on Bobby Fuller. Bobby Fuller and the Fuller Five came out of Texas in the 1960s, kind of assumed the mantle of Buddy Holly, had that
Right.
a real Tex-Mex American sound, and would have been massive superstars had the Beatles not washed ashore in the early 1960s and just changed everything. So Bobby Fuller is found dead in the backseat of a car in a motel parking lot in Los Angeles, and his body is not third-degree burns, but he's basically been set on fire. The police in LA looked at this young kid. Oh, he's a musician. Oh, he smoked grass. Oh, must be a suicide. That's the level of mentality, like not an ounce of intellectual curiosity, or, perhaps someone exerted some pressure. I don't know. But in Kurt Cobain's case, same thing, rush to judgment. He's found April the 8th, I believe it is, April 7th or April 8th, by an electrician who's visiting his house in Seattle, Washington. Walks upstairs to the greenhouse that's over the garage and finds Kurt Cobain sprawled on the floor with a shotgun across his body. He's supposedly placed the barrel in his mouth and fired the shotgun. So ruled a suicide. Well, they found a suicide note, or what appeared to be a suicide note, that's stabbed with a red pen into the soil of a flower pot that's near the body. I don't know, where you want me to get into this, but there are so many
Just run with it.
inconsistencies.
Just run with it, my friend.
Okay, so here's the problem. Kurt Cobain was not a hopeless heroin addict, as we've been told. He did use heroin from time to time, mainly for pain management. He self-medicated because he had horrible stomach problems that went undiagnosed and untreated for years. And so he used heroin to ease the pain. Once he got a proper diagnosis and proper treatment, he really wasn't a user anymore. I can't say definitively that he never touched this stuff again, but he wasn't, this portrayal that he was a suicidal heroin addict. Not true. There was mental illness in the family, to be sure. But you put those things together, and then the police just assume, okay, well, we found him, the shotgun, he blew his brains out. Must be a suicide. The problem is Kurt Cobain had 3 times the lethal dose. Well, heroin metabolizes as morphine in the blood. He had 3 times the lethal dose of morphine in his blood, according to the autopsy, which was performed by a Nicholas, I believe his name is Hartthorne. I'm forgetting his name. He passed away back in the early 2000s in a base jumping accident in Switzerland. But he later confessed, this coroner, to Ian Halpern, who wrote a book called Case Closed, The Cobain Murder, that he was intimate with Courtney Love and that he should have recused himself from the case, that he had a conflict of interest. Oh, do you think you're dating Courtney Love? And you're performing the autopsy on her husband? Are you serious? Then he confessed that he really didn't have a serious background in toxicology. So I guess you missed the fact that he had 3 times the lethal dose of morphine in his bloodstream. That amount would render most people unconscious within seconds. So we're led to believe he shoots himself up with heroin, 3 times the lethal dose. But before he places the shotgun in his mouth, he manages to neatly and carefully put all away his drug paraphernalia. Puts the little plungers back on the hypodermic needles and sticks them in his little drug case and packs them up nice and neatly. And then, because they're not found next to the body, sprawled all over the place, he put them away nice and neatly. And then he takes a shotgun. Now, I'm not a hunter, but I've held a shotgun in my hand. It's a cumbersome weapon. The barrel is long. Not only is the barrel long, but in addition to the barrel, he had a flash suppressor on the end of the barrel. So you can add another 6 inches. So now we're led to believe that he turns his barrel around, sticks the business end in his mouth, and then what does he have? Arms like Abraham Lincoln? He was a pretty diminutive guy. I mean, maybe if he had taken his shoes off, but he was found with his shoes on, and maybe used his toe, his big toe, maybe, possibly, you might be able to fire the weapon. I don't think so. I'm not buying that. Then there's the crime scene, or the death scene photos, if you will. Seems to be a lack of, and police commented on this as well. I mean, you stick a shotgun in your mouth and you fire, you can imagine the exit wound. I mean, it's going to be catastrophic and it's going to be messy. And I hate to be graphic, but you know, the blood splatter and the brain splatter one would expect was not there. No usable fingerprints on the weapon. I mean, I'm just getting started. I mean, then we talk about the suicide note, so-called suicide note. The first part of the suicide note, so-called, isn't really, I can't take it anymore, I'm going to kill myself. It appears to be really a so long, or a love letter to his fans, and kind of, you know what, it's time I'm stepping back. I want to spend more time with my family, meaning his beloved daughter, Frances Bean, who he adored. He adored Frances Bean. He would have given up music for her in a heartbeat. Then plus he was really disenchanted with the whole music business. He hated the way the band had been branded. He hated being referred to as the voice of a generation. He even began to resent the people that were showing up at his concerts. He just got tired of it and sick of it. He wanted out. Now, the last part of the note seems to have been tacked on. And that's where whoever wrote it talks about his love for Courtney and Frances Bean and how he can't take it anymore. And I'm sorry, but I just, I got to go. Well, that last part of the note, and a number of forensic handwriting analysts have looked at it. I mean, even if you're not a forensic handwriting expert, you look at it and you can tell that's not the same handwriting style. It's not even close. Now, further evidence, and again, I want to say none of these things have been proven in court. These are all allegations. Courtney Love has denied these allegations repeatedly. I say that to save your broadcast license. Courtney Love and Kurt Cobain had an attorney that worked for them. Her name was Rosemary Carroll. Rosemary Carroll got into conversation with an investigator by the name of Tom Grant. Tom Grant was hired by Courtney Love to look for Kurt Cobain when he went missing, sometime between March 31st and April 5th, when he supposedly died. Quick side note, we can't even determine with any certainty that April 5th is the day of his death. It could be 24 hours before or 24 hours after. How's that for great police procedural work, right? Normally they can tell you within like an hour or two. They don't even know if it was April 5th. Let's assume it was April 5th. Kurt Cobain got pressured into checking himself into rehab in Marina del Rey, California. There was an intervention. Members of Nirvana were there. David Grohl begged off. He said, I don't want any part of this. they said, Kurt, you got to check yourself into rehab. Begrudgingly, he went. He goes, checks himself in, and then immediately turns on his heels and checks himself out, jumps the fence, and he's out of there. He goes missing from March 31st until he shows up in April sometime. Conveniently, Courtney Love has also checked herself into rehab, and she's in Beverly Hills, California. She hires Tom Grant, says, find my husband, he's missing. Tom Grant thinks after they find Kurt Cobain dead, well, that's dead. That's kind of convenient. She has an alibi. Isn't that remarkable? Tom Grant starts talking with the lawyer, Rosemary Carroll, and they discover what appear to be practice sheets in Courtney Love's backpack. She appears to have been practicing writing in Kurt's hand, not doing a very good job by all accounts. So that's kind of curious, don't you think?
That's odd. That's very odd. Yeah.
Plus Kurt Cobain was in the process of changing his will. This comes from Rosemary Carroll. In fact, I think all that needed to be done was for him to sign off on it. That would have meant all future revenue. The royalties are enormous for Nirvana. Kurt Cobain is consistently listed in the top 2 or 3 dead celebrity earners. It's not a great list to be on, unfortunately, but that's the case.
Yes.
All that money, all of it, every cent of it would have gone to Frances Bean, not a cent of it to Courtney Love. Now, in her defense, she's had some pretty good success as on her own as a musician with her band Hole, and I guess as a solo artist as well. So you could say, well, that's not really a motive. She didn't need Kurt's money. Maybe, maybe not.
No, but the rights are huge. And I think a lot of that, I was reading a stat just the other day. Frances Bean Cobain is allegedly worth like over $200 million right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Again, these are allegations, never been proven in court. One final thing I'll just add to that, and there's more in the chapter in the book. There was a musician, a drummer and lead singer with a band called the Mentors. I think he was in other bands as well, but primarily known for his work in the Mentors. And they were, I guess you would call that style of music shock rock. Not something I want to listen to. However, his name was Eldon Hoke. He went by the stage name El Duce. Now, there's a documentary, maybe you've seen it, by Nick Broomfield, and it's called Kurt and Courtney. It was produced in 1997, I think. So 3 years after Kurt's death. Nick Broomfield tracks down El Duce, Eldon Hoke. And on film, Hoke says that Courtney Love came up to him after a show and offered him X amount of dollars, I can't remember the amount, to kill Kurt Cobain. And Eldon laughed and he said, "You can't be serious." And she said, quote, end quote, "I'm as serious as a heart attack." I think she even mentioned to kill him with a shotgun. Don't quote me on that, but it is in the book. Eldon Hoke, of course, refused, even though he played this kind of, bad boy. He was a pretty decent guy. Wouldn't hurt a fly by all accounts. Several days after that interview, Eldon Hoke was found dead on a railroad track and hit behind by a freight train, supposedly, allegedly.
That is incredible. As we got about a minute to go here before we go to break at the bottom of the hour, Richard Syrett is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. Richard, I mean, you're presenting the facts that have come out, with these cases, the strange facts, that is. How much stock do you put in that there is a secondary story that the public doesn't know? 20-second answer.
There's always a secondary story, and it's not necessarily about rock and roll. There is always, I don't care if, the weatherman tells you it's going to be sunny out, I take an umbrella.
Well,
There's
that's
always
one
a second
way to stay
story.
dry.
There's always a secondary story. There's the official narrative, and then, there's all those unanswered questions. And this book is not a manifesto. I don't claim to have a monopoly on the truth. And I'm quoting great researchers and musicians and so forth. This isn't case closed on any of these. but we're simply tugging on threads that should have been tugged on a long time ago.
Richard Syrett is here. We have until the top of the hour, and his book, get it on Amazon, Tales from the Rock and Roll Twilight Zone.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with your host, Dave Scott.
I tried to sneak this in, and thank you to Sonny in the chat room as well. But in Duff McKagan's autobiography, he mentioned how a couple days before when Cobain was, he had left rehab and was flying back to his home in Seattle, that they were on the same plane.
That is true. And Duff says that Kurt was in great spirits.
Yeah.
He was a funny guy, Kurt. People used to say, "Oh yeah, we do heroin. Yeah, I fill up turkey basters full of this stuff," and they took him seriously. They thought he was being serious. He was just having them on.
Still, that remember when tickets were actually affordable for a concert, $17-18?
Yeah,
and him getting that look on his face that Madonna was charging $35 a ticket, and he was just like, "You got to be kidding me right now. Who does that?" And now, if you think he was alive now, it'd be $200 a ticket.
$500.
That's just for the nosebleeds.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah. I had to laugh on your super chat there. Somebody said, rumor has it Richard preferred the Carpenter's version of calling all occupants to Clatoos. That's a fun.
Yeah. We're going to sneak in some audience questions coming up here. That was one of them right there. Rumor has it Richard prefers the Carpenter's version calling on.
That's great. I love it. It's true. Guilty as charged.
Oh, man. I got a buddy of mine who he's worked a long time in the music industry, knows absolutely everybody. And he says, he never goes in depth. Like he hates talking about the people that he knows because he always thinks that, people are trying to rub him for information, so he keeps really, really quiet on things. But I'll never forget him telling me one day that behind the scenes, when the backstage after a concert, like he'd say be at a Guns N' Roses concert or a Pantera concert or wherever, and you're in the after party. He's like, Dave, you wouldn't believe what people talk about back there. It isn't all about just getting high and picking up groupies. He goes, you wouldn't believe the amount of senators, Congress people, military officials, actors, actresses that I have met back there. And they all speak of this haywire life that nobody talks about.
Yeah, it's pretty dark, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's crazy. Absolutely crazy.
Yeah, there's
2 minutes.
How many? 2? Okay.
2. You having fun, Rich?
I was just going to say, I am having a great time. Thank you for this. It's been a long time since I've had this much fun on the radio. Seriously.
Anytime you want to come on, you just let me know.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank
you. You got the green light. So here's something I've been fiddling with all night. I want to quickly show you this. Got a dime.
Right.
And I have a copper beaded bracelet.
Okay.
I have a trail camera in the forest at one of my areas that I search for Sasquatch. It records videos. I have no video of these two objects being placed on my gifting tree. My trail camera is 15 feet away from the tree.
And they showed up.
These two objects showed up on the side of the camera where the camera would be able to catch it like you and me.
Oh, that's cool.
And so I traded them. I traded it for a glow stick and a quarter. Apparently Sasquatch love glow sticks,
Yes, yes. In the mosh pit. They wear them in the mosh pit.
right? Oh, dude. You ever get an opportunity, if I could get back on your show sometime, I got to tell you about this crazy spot called Flight 21. It's like a mini Skinwalker Ranch out in the middle of the forest, about 35 kilometers from
You
here.
know, that's, you know what an oversight. Like, yeah, why aren't you on my podcast? Let me have my EP Jackie reach out to you and let's get this done.
Let's do it.
That's
I'll tell you
ridiculous.
about it. This place is crazy.
Okay.
All right, we're coming back in 3 seconds.
Got it.
We're into the second half of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. We're going to get right to our guest, Richard Syrett. You may know him from Coast to Coast AM, and he's also not only a fantastic broadcaster, but a great writer as well. He's got a book out on Amazon, Tales from the Rock and Roll Twilight Zone, Eerie Enigmas and Supernatural Secrets from Rock's Darkest Corners. We were talking about, right before the break, about the weird, strange death of Kurt Cobain and how there is still a big conspiracy theory about that. I want to bring in a couple questions from one of my favorite listeners, Mama Catherine here. She is down in Georgia. I adopted her as my mother after my mom passed away. So this one, she is asking, Richard, please talk to Util Burbridge. I apologize if I got that wrong, about Colonel Bruce and the Grateful Dead concerts. Do you know anything about that?
I don't. I did produce an episode for the podcast on the Grateful Dead, specifically about the man who made their acid, not only for Grateful Dead. Owsley Stanley made the acid for the Grateful Dead and many other bands in a bathtub at Berkeley, and was rumored to have CIA connections. Of course, this was at a time when LSD was still legal in the United States. And so the Grateful Dead became sort of the house band for the Merry Pranksters, and they were traveling around doing the electric Kool-Aid acid test. And Owsley Stanley was also the sort of the sound engineer. I mean, if you went to a Grateful Dead concert, I mean, it had the stacks of amplifiers and so forth. The wall of sound, that was, we often hear that word associated with Phil Spector, but it was Owsley Stanley who really who created that sound, and as I say, made the acid. We're introducing a whole generation of young people while it was still legal to LSD. And one of the rumors is that, of course, people like Dr. Timothy Leary at Harvard was conducting experiments with it. They were trying to legitimize, acid, and they were trying to use this perhaps to subvert the hippie movement or the younger generation, as is often the case, winning the hearts and minds of the youth in order to manipulate and influence and subvert the culture. And so you could say that the Grateful Dead perhaps were being used as useful idiots or useful fools in that regard, as were a number of other artists. There's a whole chapter in the book. Section 1 is all about the Beatles. It's called The Beatles Enigma, and chapter 1 is called Fab Four or False Flag. Were the Beatles, as part of the British invasion, an actual British invasion, not metaphorical, literal, an attempt by the British Crown, let's call it, along with MI6 and the Tavistock Institute, to, wash ashore in America 3 months after the trauma of the Kennedy assassination, and unbeknownst to these, talented sirens of the Mercy beat, that they would be used to introduce American culture into sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and questioning authority, questioning the church, questioning the family. This was Britain's attempt to sort of soften up America perhaps in an attempt to win back the colony they had lost in 1781.
Well, Commonwealth has to try and come back somehow, right?
Yeah, instead of muskets and redcoats, they were using Rickenbacker guitars and backbeats.
Les Paul is rolling over in his grave somewhere right now.
No doubt.
Mama Catherine's also asking, are the two Allman Brothers band members who died tragically in your book?
They are not. Again, there's 16 out of 40 episodes. And I don't even know if we got around to the Allman Brothers for the podcast, but this is another topic that our Gary Patterson and I used to talk about. He used to love to talk about the Allman Brothers and the strange synchronicities, where, of course, two members of the band died on this almost the exact same stretch of road. I think it was in Georgia on their motorbikes. And then there was the case when Dwayne Allman Dwayne Allman was the one that died of a drug overdose. No, he died in a bike accident, but he had a drug overdose. And one of the members of the band, it wasn't looking good. They didn't think he would live. One members of the band, whether it was, I can't remember anyway, went out into the hospital parking lot, got down on his knees and cried and said, please, God, just give him another year. Well, 1 year to that day, he did survive the drug overdose. 1 year to that day, he died on his motorbike.
Wow. It's amazing how that's just so preconceived. Let's go to Derek here in Florida. Richard, can you speak on Jim Morrison's father and the Gulf of Tonkin incident in Vietnam, and how possibly his father had Jim put in an MK Ultra program? Then later in life, Jim faked his own unaliving.
That's
a mouthful right there.
Unaliving. I like that. Well, I did talk about Jim Morrison in the podcast. Again, it's not in this volume of Tales from the Rock and Roll Twilight Zone, but he's right. Jim Morrison's father was an admiral in the U.S. Navy. He was involved in the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which we now know was a false flag, and it was used as the excuse to get the United States, or to ramp up U.S. involvement in Vietnam, basically to start the war. They'd had troops in Vietnam in an advisory capacity. John F. Kennedy wanted to reverse that and pull them out. As soon as he was assassinated, Lyndon Johnson reinstituted U.S. involvement in Vietnam. But yes, his father was an admiral. MK Ultra, well, there was up in Laurel Canyon, there was a kind of a secret military installation, and there were rumors that certain musicians, there are a lot of musicians that have military connections, and Jim Morrison isn't the only one. I remember reading several years ago that Joan Baez had claimed that she had been enrolled in some kind of an MK Ultra type program. I'd have to go searching for that article again, but it seems to me it was Joan Baez. Did Jim Morrison end up in an MK Ultra program? I don't know. I did speak to his former brother-in-law, Alan Graham, who was married to Jim's sister for a time, and Alan had some great stories about Jim Morrison and believed that Jim suffered from fetal alcohol syndrome. This was in the day when drinking while pregnant was not necessarily seen as that big a deal. And this was a military family, and they had cocktail hour, every day. So Jim was born drunk and started drinking heavily by the time he was about 8 years old. Obviously a brilliant poet. I think he had a bit of a death wish. These rumors that he faked his death, there's some pretty compelling, interesting stories about how he faked his death. And there was somebody up in, I think, Oregon, who was working on a horse ranch, who claimed that he was Jim Morrison, looked a little bit like him. I do believe Jim Morrison died in a club on Paris's left bank, and then he was removed. His body was removed from the club. They brought him home to the apartment. He was placed in the bathtub. He didn't die in that apartment. He died elsewhere. But I think he's dead. Although it's interesting, his cemetery or his grave site, if you've ever been to Père Lachaise, which is a tremendous cemetery, Oscar Wilde is buried there. Some great Sandra Bernhard, not the comedian, but the singer from the 1920s or 30s. Some other great notables are buried there. Jim Morrison is buried there. Ray Manzarek and Robbie Krieger, I think, and John Dinsmore went to visit his grave, and they both noticed because, geez, this is awfully short. Jim was about 6 foot. The plot looks like it might fit somebody who's about 5'9". And of course, the rumors that nobody really saw the body. His girlfriend, Pam Corson, allegedly slept with the body for several days before she bothered to tell anybody. Alan Graham said, we didn't know what happened to Jim. Nobody told us. It was days and days before we finally got word that he was dead. But then, the coffin was sealed. There seemed to be kind of a quick, superficial autopsy performed. And that was it, buried very quickly and very quietly. So I understand the rumors, why they persist.
Yeah, we kind of bring them on ourselves, don't we? It also ties into the 27 Club.
Mm.
We've talked about Kurt Cobain. We've talked about Jim Morrison, Jimi Hendrix. I mean, the list goes on and on. I believe the last real famous 27 Club member was Amy Winehouse a number of years ago.
That's right. It actually started with, I suppose you could argue, with Robert Johnson. We talked about Robert Johnson earlier, and this is in the 1930s. He was 27 when he died. Now, back then, people weren't keeping track, and they weren't sort of plugged into the whole scene the way we are today. But you could argue it started with Robert Johnson, and then it was forgotten about until 1969, 1970, 71. What a horrible span of just 3 years. We lost Brian Jones in July of 69. We lost Jimi Hendrix in September of 1970, Janis less than a month later in October of 1970, and then Jim Morrison in 71, all 27. That's when people started to take notice. Those 4 mega stars all dying, all age 27. Then it was forgotten about again until Kurt Cobain in 1994, and then forgotten about again perhaps until 2011 with Amy Winehouse, as you mentioned. But it's not limited to them. And not even to rock. There's a list as long as my leg of musicians, blues musicians. Pigpen, the original keyboardist with the Grateful Dead, also died at 27. It's a very long list. I have kind of a prosaic explanation that may not satisfy some people as to why it happens around the age of 27. I just think it is typically sort of the peak of an artist's creativity, assuming they get into the business around, maybe their late teens or early 20s. By the time they're 27, they arguably maybe have put their best work out. And, you talk to any great star, great songwriter like Bob Dylan, he doesn't even recognize the person who wrote Like a Rolling Stone. He says, I can't do that anymore. So by the time you're 27, maybe your best years are behind you. You've got the record company on your back. You've got the fans beating down the door. You've got your manager saying, you got to tour, but I'm tired. I don't care. You're out on tour, endless tours. Enter into that deadly cocktail, an attempt to find some refuge, perhaps in a bottle of whiskey or with some pills, or maybe, God forfend, some heroin. It's a deadly cocktail, and it happens, coincidentally or not, around that age of 27. That's the prosaic explanation. If you want a sort of an astrological explanation, and I don't subscribe to this necessarily, but it is interesting. When you're born, Saturn, the planet Saturn, in your birth chart is in a particular location. About, coincidentally or not, 27, maybe 28 years later, in and around there, Saturn returns to that same location where it was during your birth chart. So some astrologers look at that journey of Saturn through your chart as kind of of closing the circle, as kind of fulfillment or resolution, if you will.
It's got my mind wondering about who else is on the 27 Club. I know Shannon Hoon is there. I think, isn't Brian Jones on there as well?
Yes, I mentioned Brian. Yeah, he was in July of '69.
Yeah.
Death by misadventure, accidental drowning. Interesting to note that he died in Sussex. He had purchased the Cochford farm, which was once owned by A.A. Milne, the great British writer, of course, who brought us Winnie
Yes.
the Pooh, and found at the bottom of a swimming pool. Instead of the coroner in Sussex, which would have been, the protocol, the jurisdiction would have been the coroner in Sussex, the Prime Minister himself, Prime Minister Heath, appointed his own personal physician to handle the autopsy. Funny thing, that.
Yeah. All right, let's go to Paramarv here, who is asking, what's the most misunderstood or underreported music conspiracy in your opinion?
Wow. The one I mentioned, I'll tell you the most reported music conspiracy, and may not even be just music. It may be one of the greatest conspiracy theories of all time, and that is the Paul is dead legend, that he died in 1966 in a crash and was replaced by a body double. I do write about that. I don't believe that he was, because in order to believe that, you'd have to believe that, I don't know, George Martin or Brian Epstein or the tall foreheads at EMI managed to find someone who looked almost exactly like Paul McCartney, also was a left-handed bass player, and was arguably even more talented than the original Paul. Because if you look at the body of work of McCartney, certainly, pre-66, he wrote Yesterday, the most covered song in popular music history. But post-66, the faux Paul, the fake Paul, the body double, wrote Hey Jude, Let It Be, The Long and Winding Road, did some great music with Wings, and has a pretty amazing solo career. So I don't buy it, but I do write about it because I think from a sociological angle, it's absolutely fascinating that a legend like that took place, took root, and spread like wildfire 50 years before the advent of the internet. Well, not 50 years, 35, 40 years, and probably almost 50 years before social media. All, word of mouth, university dorms, people huddled over their phonographs, playing Strawberry Fields backwards and hearing John Lennon say, I buried Paul, or Turn Me On, Dead Man. It's absolutely amazing. But the clues are real. The clues are real. The question is who put them there and why. As to maybe the most underreported music conspiracy, let's see. I think the first chapter in the Beatles section, this idea that the Beatles were not this organic cultural event, even though they were immensely talented, that they were perhaps at some level engineered by intelligence, by the Tavistock Institute, by the British Crown, and weaponized, really, a piece of software injected into the American psyche at one of their most vulnerable points ever, 3 months after the Kennedy assassination. I think there's a lot of things in that chapter that are really going to surprise people.
That is great. That is great. We only have about 6 minutes left with you, Richard, on tonight's show. Richard Syrett is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. When you look at all of these conspiracy theories that run through music, whether it's, deals with the devil, whether it's lip syncing, or whether it's, drugs, alcohol, and MK Ultra all mixed into one. One of the stories that I love, and I'm not sure you wrote about it, probably going off your book grain here, I'm going to tantalize your UFO thoughts here for a second. How many artists have written about UFOs and alien abductions? What's your favorite UFO or alien abduction song?
Favorite alien abduction song? Wow. Now you're really putting me on the spot. There is one by the Moody Blues. I can't remember the title. The Moody Blues actually believed or claimed that they were abducted on the way to a concert. But I can't think of the name of the song. But I did cover in the podcast. It didn't make it into the book, maybe volume 2. I think the episode was called UFO Rock, about, people like Sammy Hagar, who believe he was abducted, and Ace Frehley and Cat Stevens and the Moody Blues, perhaps most famously, all believed that they were abducted. In fact, I spoke with a couple of paranormal researchers the other night, and they wrote a book on the Lindsay Wiggins abduction case. I don't know if you've covered that.
No.
Dan Baldwin and George Sewell, they use a pendulum. Not that I'm a big fan of divination. However, they used a pendulum much in the way that people are using these divining rods now all over social media to answer these questions. But they investigated Lindsay Higgins, who believed that she'd been abducted. And one of the stories is that she was a big Kiss fan, and she went to see Kiss perform. And I guess she had, the backstage pass. She paid a little extra, and she got to go back and meet the band. And when Ace Frehley saw her, and she saw Ace Frehley, and I don't know the full story. I would imagine, I'm guessing maybe this was Saw makeup, backstage after the show. Maybe they had taken their makeup off. The two locked eyes as if they recognized each other, and they were struggling. They really didn't say a lot to each other. They were pointing. There was recognition there. They were struggling to find, where do I know you from? And Lindsay later, after reading about Ace Frehley's abduction encounters or abductions, came to believe that perhaps they had both been taken aboard the same craft at some point.
That would be amazing. That would be amazing. Them recognizing each other on that part. My favorite one is Love Walks In by Van Halen, Sammy Hagar singing that song, but there's so many different ones, like I never knew the Flock of Seagulls. Iran was about running away from aliens trying to grab them and take them up into their craft.
All right. Well, see, now we're getting into a musical genre. While everyone else was listening to Duran Duran and Flock of Seagulls, I was into the 3Ds, the Dead, Dylan, and the Doors. So you'll have to excuse me. But my musical tastes, I guess, are a little. I need to expand my Epicurean horizon, I suppose.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing how many artists have written about it. It's, from, and I hate to use this one because she's dating Justin Trudeau. Katy Perry, my former crush. She claims to be an ET abductee.
Interesting. Yeah. I can believe that. Yeah.
Dave Mustaine and Megadeth, their song Hangar 18 is about UFOs.
Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Hangar 18, where they keep the Roswell bodies. Allegedly, reportedly, in my opinion.
And it makes me think back to what I said to you earlier, about how these guys, when they have, people backstage after a show, how much information have they learned? I mean, we think of them, all about sex, drugs, and rock and roll. But on the flip side, when you get a lot of people back there and, they want to be popular. And when you're popular, people tell you things.
Yeah.
And I don't think us as the public really understand that.
Well, case in point would be, as I mentioned earlier, James Tappy Wright, who was the roadie and the road manager for Hendrix and the Animals and Ike and Tina Turner and others. They get told stuff, according to Tappy Wright. Mike Jeffrey confessed to him. He said one night, several years after Jimmy's death, and they were touring the film Monterey, of course, the Monterey Pop Festival of 1967, where Jimmy stole the show. And so they took the film on the road several years after and were playing it in theaters, and Tappy and Mike Jeffrey were touring with the film. And one night, I guess they got into the cups, and Mike Jeffrey said to Tappy, I had to do it, Tappy. And Tappy's saying, confused, what do you mean you had to do it? Do what? He goes, I had to do it, meaning he had to kill Jimmy.
Oh, man. Tell everybody where they can find your book.
They can get more information. First of all, it goes on, it's available for pre-sale now. It'll actually be out and they'll be shipping it July the 9th. But pre-sale, I'm told, I'm new to this business, I'm told pre-sale numbers are very important. So if you can order it pre-sale, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, I think it's even available on Walmart online. Just about anywhere you find books online. And you can also I built a website for the book called the rockandrolltwilightzone.com. There's I got some great praise from people like JJ French of Twisted Sister and Steve Lukather from Toto and Mark Farner, my buddy from Grand Funk Railroad. All write some nice blurbs for me.
To Spaced Out Radio. With your host, Dave Scott.
I'm blaming you for my faux pas there that I forgot to check the clock. I apologize.
It is my fault. I take all the blame.
Richard, thank you, buddy.
Oh,
Let's
Dave,
talk again.
thank you. What a pleasure. And I'll have my EP reach out to you, and we're going to get you on Strange Planets soon.
Let's do it. Much
Okay,
love, my
buddy.
friend.
All right. Have a great night. Thank you.
Take care. Good night.
Stop now! You're under arrest! Hands up! Don't move!
Don't get caught without your Spaced Out Radio merchandise. We have t-shirts, mugs, hoodies, socks, hats, stickers, and so much more. Whatever you're looking for, we have you covered. Why just be a fan of the paranormal when you can look the part? We don't have ugly merch, folks. Check out the Spaced Out Radio store. Find the link in the description below.
Dirty filth. Dirty filth. Dirty filth.
Object is heading north 045 degrees. It's definitely not a plane. It seems to be tethered to something. Is that a banner, Joe? Caribou Con. Does anyone know what Caribou Con is?
Caribou Con, one of the BC Caribou region's best-kept secrets. Until now. Join our panel of renowned paranormal experts for a weekend of fun and intriguing presentations. Go to cariboucon.com to book or inquire now.
Over here. Look at this.
Discover Spaced Out Radio on all your favorite platforms. We're live every single night with the best in UFOs, cryptids, paranormal, and the unexplained. And you can find us on all your favorite platforms. Head over to Instagram for behind the scenes and daily weirdness, TikTok for quick mind-bending clips, Facebook for community discussions, and X for real-time updates and hot takes. Wherever you scroll, Spaced Out Radio is there. So go search Spaced Out Radio on every platform, hit follow, and turn on notifications so you never miss a single episode. The weird is waiting. See you there.
The McNeil House is one of several buildings at the 108-mile heritage site said to be haunted by spirits of a time long forgotten. But would you stay the night? Along with guided ghost tours and paranormal investigations, Haunted 108 is offering a chance to spend the entire night inside the historic McNeil House by booking one of our B&B style sleepovers, where you can experience the hauntings firsthand, meet the resident ghost cat, and witness unusual activity. If you dare to turn history into a night you'll never forget, book your spot now at haunted108.com. Spots are limited. Will you be brave enough?
All right, let's bring in the wizard. There he is. Look how handsome he's looking.
Look at that.
You don't get much more handsome than that.
Oh my goodness, I appreciate that, man. I'm blushing over here.
Look at Nicole Sackage here. $17.52, and you can get a t-shirt. SOR swag ain't ugly. That is very true. Nothing ugly there. Nothing ugly.
You like my new hat, Dave?
I was just staring at that. That's nice.
That's my design.
I love it. Good for you.
Thank you.
Thank you to T-Bone ×2, Mama Catherine, and Pam Harris for our super chats. We greatly appreciate your love and support. Swamp Dweller tonight will be about 5 minutes, Josh.
Okay.
Here we go. Third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. It's jam-packed. We got Swamp Dweller, and we have Josh Rutledge on the UFO Report. Yes, the wizard filling in for Grant Baker. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, because we love bringing these topics to you. Hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the Newswire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Derain. Derain is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Let's head to the swamp.
Hello and welcome to Spaced Out Radio's Swamp. I'm Swamp Dweller, and tonight I'm going to take you on a mystic journey of the unknown, sharing tales of monsters, legends, and nightmares. Welcome to the Spaced Out Radio Swamp. A little background before we begin. Everyone says the same thing. I'm an avid outdoorsman. I hunt, fish, camp, hike, and kayak. My buddy is not an outdoorsman. He goes party camping with me, and that's about it. We have never experienced anything like what I'm about to tell you. This happened in 2018. The day before, we were camping at a lake in the Nicollet National Forest in northern Wisconsin. The trees were changing color at the time, and the leaves were starting to fall. It was freezing at night, being October. My buddy got cold quickly and drove around in the mornings to warm up. We would go into town to get gas and supplies, mainly beer. There needed to be more to do at our campground, and with no hiking or activities, day drinking is kind of what we relied on, listening to music and talking about party camping. The next day was going to be an overcast, rainy day. So we decided to spend it by driving around, looking at other campgrounds and scouting them out for other trips. We quote-unquote partied that night and went to bed late. Everything was normal. We heard wolves, owls, loons, and all the other good stuff. But after a while, we heard nothing. Just pure quiet. It was peaceful. It started raining early the next day. Just a drizzle at first, but enough to make camping a pain. We got up late, hungover and cold. We dressed in our hiking gear and jumped in the car to get warm. We left the lake campsite a little after noon to check out the other campgrounds. It was about 5 miles to the next one and basically on the highway without privacy. We would generally check them out, but it started raining very hard. We stayed in the car, marking down the campsites we liked and the ones we didn't. This one we didn't really particularly like. Now, the thing about this national forest is there are campsites and campgrounds spread out absolutely everywhere. They need to be connected in some sort of way. So you have to get on the highway, find a little sign that says campsites this way, and then drive down a dirt road for 10 to 15 minutes to find them. We made it to about 8 before 5 o'clock. We were at the entrance of what was going to be our last one for the day. It said the road was 15 miles. I went slowly, not trying to kick too many rocks up into my car. The road was honestly pretty eerie. The trees made the street look like we were going down a cave. A couple of minutes in, and the rain had stopped. At the campsites, there was no one there. It was beginning to get dark. We had been in the car all day, and we were ready to get out and stretch our legs. We parked at the first campsite and got out. Birds were singing their lullabies, and everything was still. There were 5 campsites in a circular clearing with thick trees all around. The sites were open to each other and could have been better for my camping. Only if you rented all the sites. Honestly, we walked around the circle and noticed a sign that said group camp pointing up a trail. We started down the gravel path full of wet leaves to the site. After walking for some time, I realized it wasn't even close. I raised this concern with my buddy, but we wanted to see the site anyway. It was almost dark out, but we could still see rather well. I noticed the birds had stopped singing at this point. It was a hushed tone in the forest. All we heard was our own footsteps. We made it to the group site after walking for quite a few minutes. It was still and nothing was moving. We were at the end of the trail looking into the area. The hair on the back of my neck started to stand up, and my skin crawled. Standing, about 30 feet to our left, was a very massive, dark-haired creature. I was frozen with fear. My buddy hadn't noticed it yet and was still walking. I said his name quietly. He must have known something was wrong because he stopped and turned to his left immediately. We were both frozen. I was standing there what felt like minutes, but it couldn't have been more than a few seconds. I knew what it was, but in my head I was saying they weren't real. I couldn't even speak. Then it started slowly moving towards us. It started yelling some deep throaty gibberish at us. Against all my instincts to hold my ground and fight back, we ran for it. It ran with us, and it was still screaming. We kept running for our lives. It was running parallel to us. Its scream was replaced by what I can only describe as a deep, throaty huffing noise. It was crashing through the dead brush, keeping up with us effortlessly. We were running, trying not to slip on the leaves or just die. We saw the car and had hope. As soon as we got to the clearing, it stopped. It hit a tree, more like it punched through a tree. We heard a huge crack and crash. We were almost to the car when this massive tree hit the ground next to us. We then listened to what can only be described as a great ape beating its chest in triumph while screaming. We jumped in the car and sped away. The rest was a blur. We got back to the campground, packed up, and left at night. We never spoke about it again and haven't talked about it since. I'm almost entirely possible what we experienced that day was a Bigfoot.
Oh, the big feats. They are out there somewhere. Thank you, Swamp Dweller, for another spooky story. If you want more just like that, head on over to YouTube, type in Swamp Dweller, hit subscribe, ring that bell. Thousands of stories for you to get to each and every day and night. With that, we go from the swamp to the stars, filling in for Grant Baker on the UFO Report. Here's the Wizard.
Space Out Radio presents a UFO report. The UFO wizard makes his presence known. Just ready to go.
It's always good to have you on the show, Wizard. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing fantastic, Dave. It is almost the weekend, and there's a cold front coming through Phoenix, so it's going to be 98 on Saturday instead of over 100.
Oh, wow. You know, it was eerie today. I was out and about.
Pennsylvania?
Oh, no, not Pennsylvania or the lake. I got a whiff of forest fire. Oh, yeah. Now, nothing's burning around me right now. The closest fire is about 30 to 40 miles away.
Winds blowing in, though?
No. It's actually been quite peaceful. Quite peaceful. So hopefully they could get a hold of that one pretty quick. But yeah, I didn't like that. Didn't like it at all. But yeah, it's always this time of year, man. We can make it to August, we'll be good.
Yeah.
August seems to be the time where, you get up here where I live, you get the cooler nights. So like you could be 80, 90 degrees up here during the day, but those night temperatures in August, they drop down to near freezing. So the fire really doesn't like that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep. You think it would love it because the oxygen density should be really high on cold nights. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe we could interview fire sometime and ask it why it doesn't like cold temperatures.
So what do you got for us tonight, Wizard? There's a lot going on, including up here in Canada. What do you think's happening in the UFO world? Are people still upset about the latest tranche that really showed nothing?
Yes, I think that generally people in the community are upset with all of the supposed drop of UFO reports simply because, like we talked about on, earlier in the week on the show on Monday, they contain a lot of documentation that's either A, been released before, B, doesn't contain a lot of, good context to really know if what you're looking at. I mean, MUFON is going through the effort of, they've got people volunteer, I'm one of them, going through all the different files and identifying like the stuff that, has the potential of truly being an unknown. And, I'm looking through a lot of things that, there's one where I looked at the other day that I was like, well, it kind of looks like a balloon. Just the idea that somebody is in the military or works for the government doesn't mean that they couldn't, misidentify things. They're human like the rest of us. So I think I think a lot of people were hoping that this drop of files and, we could be getting more, I don't know, that are better. Ryan Graves and a few others have hinted at that we're getting better files, better documents or videos that are coming. But so far, what's been released is rather bland and really inconclusive is the best word that I think I would use. Inconclusive. There's no smoking boomstick. I'm not allowed to say the other word, I don't think, but there's no smoking boomstick, if you will, in what's been released so far. So, maybe there is a file that's in there that's hidden. One of the files that I investigated, it was in the second tranche. In the start of the video that's shown, it's kind of like a drone or something is flying, and you see this vessel, this man-made oil tanker. Well, I pulled the name, looked it up, found its location of operation at the time when the video was apparently recorded, and was able to look at and know that the object observed or filmed in that video was moving against the wind. Well, that's pretty significant. But the only reason I was able to find that piece of information is because for a split second, they were looking at an oil tanker that I could actually look up and see where it was operating in February of 2020. But most videos don't have any type of that information to be able to give any further credibility to what's being released as potential UAP. So I think most people are still mad about what's being released, and frankly, I'm one of them.
I'm one of them too. You know, I was so excited when the first couple of tranches came out because we were seeing things that we had never seen before. Okay. We were seeing things that we'd only heard of, and the videos and everything that kind of goes along with that. And, you know, it really built up a lot of momentum. And then they skipped the week to release the third tranche right during the same day release of Disclosure Day. And that release, I mean, people were building it up. Congress people were building it up. This release is going to be amazing. People are going to be shocked at what's in there. I wasn't shocked. I was absolutely flabbergasted seeing digital renderings of photos of events, digital renderings of videos. I mean, to me, when you sit there and you play and you are using and re-releasing a public interview from 50 years ago from Walter Cronkite.
Yeah.
That's not evidence. That's not a UFO file. That's nothing. What that is it's a slap to our face, basically them calling us stupid.
Yeah, well, and I think we talked about it when back when Trump first made his statement of we're going to release all these UFO files. We talked about what it would potentially be. And, I said then, and I think the release of files so far supports what I said, which is I don't think that, Trump or any of the people in his cabinet that have been asked to release these files really necessarily care what they've been asked to release. They're not invested in having the truth about this topic really come forward. And again, the files that have been released to date support that statement, I think.
It almost makes you wonder if this is the start of sweeping this subject back under the rug.
Well, I think yeah, I mean, it's very possible. It's also very possible that they get to a point where they're like, okay, that's everything we have. And then we're all just enraged because they released nothing that we all suspect that they have. I feel like we're going to get to tranche 6. And that's the statement. Well, somebody's going to say, we put everything out. We don't have anything else. And we're really going to be right back where we were before any of this started, where, it's pretty much the government denying that they have anything beyond historical records or, computer generated drawings of people's accounts of experiences. The videos, like I said, the videos may contain nuggets of truth. Like, the one video that I was able to do some deep research on, investigation on, it has the potential to be a true quote unquote unknown. The look and everything of the object that's seen doesn't match anything that I know of that we have. It's moving against the wind relatively fast. I mean, it's just things like that. But until they can actually provide good details about these videos to where people can investigate them to be able to say, yes, this is a UAP, or no, this isn't. Even the council that's been spun up now with Avi Loeb and everything, we talked about that a little bit on Monday. I mean, are they going to be going through the tranches of stuff? Or are they going to be going through other things that have not been declassified for release? If all they're going to do is go through all the the tranches of stuff that's been released, that's a giant waste of their time. So I don't know, just it's really on the one hand, it's frustrating because what they're releasing doesn't add a lot of value to the conversation. And on the other hand, it's frustrating because it was made, the statements that were made, I think, gave hope that they were finally going to give us some stuff. And so far, it's been a nothing burger.
It's hard to accept, but that is the reality right now. And now we all have to sit there and wonder, when is the next one? Is there a next one? What will it contain? And should we be shocked anymore if we start seeing more silliness? I'm going to use that term, silliness, in the files that are repeated. Like I mentioned, a Walter Cronkite interview with Apollo 14 astronauts is not evidence. There's no reason for it to be in there. It's been in the public for decades.
Yeah. I mean, it's even all of the, the Gemini missions, briefings, and the Apollo mission briefings. I mean, all that stuff has been released before. I was looking at documentation that was released back in the 70s for a recent grudge file for Project Grudge that was investigated for an event that happened here in Phoenix in 1947. And I was reading through the report that was documented then. And that was all declassified in the 70s. Some of it was declassified in the 50s. So, again, I think it was I don't know if I can say this on the radio. I'll just say it was a it was a half-butted attempt to pull something together. Somebody just did a keyword search across a bunch of databases, grabbed stuff, didn't care if it was already declassified, didn't care if it was already released, and just found it and marked it ready to go. And somebody rubber stamped the whole thing and sent it out. In fact, if you think about it, the fact that they are releasing stuff that has already been declassified and released, it really just adds to the insult that they really don't even care. They don't care about any of the topic. They just grabbed up a whole bunch of stuff, threw it out there, and said, "Here, look what we did. We released the files that you wanted." Like I get no sense of really caring about us as an interested group of people who want to know the truth. And the sad thing is that I think it may cause a lot of people to look at the government. A lot of people think the government knows more than what they're telling us. But if President Trump said we're going to release all the files, and then they come along and they say we've released all the files, and the files don't tell us anything we didn't already know, then a lot of people may come to the conclusion that the government doesn't know anything that they aren't telling us, which is almost a worse position for the government to be in. Because then, it's like the whole thing of, what's the adage? It's better to be thought a fool than to open your mouth and remove all doubt. Well, war.gov/UFO, they've opened their mouth. Right now, I don't think I have any doubt.
We got about a minute to go before we have to go to break at the bottom of the hour. The UFO wizard, Josh Rutledge, is here tonight on Spaced Out Radio. Now, as we kind of move forward, Danny Sheehan taking a little bit of criticism, yet people are lauding the fact that he went on a podcast, for a podcast called Aliens Last Night, where he was saying that General Neil McCaslin, right before he disappeared, after learning that the House Oversight Task Force had his name on a subpoena to list, testify on UFOs. Now, I don't know if Danny has any insight on this, but he seemed pretty matter of fact about it.
Interesting. I didn't see that. And there's a lot of, I don't know. I may eat crow on this, but I still don't think there's really anything to all this missing scientist stuff. I've heard a lot of people talk about, making linkages with their virtual pegboards. I just don't know. It just seems really like we're looking for information to support a narrative.
Hold that thought, Josh.
This is Spaced Out Radio. Your host, Dave Scott.
We'll be right back with UFO wizard Josh Rutland. All right, brother, we're clear.
How are you going to ask me that deep of a question with less than a minute left before the break and then expect me to like rebut with something?
My bad. My bad. Sometimes one of the issues that I have with this show, okay, is I get so into it that I forget to clock watch.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, I definitely get that. You get either with a guest or whatever, you just get into like a really good, deep conversation. And it's almost difficult sometimes because if you have to stop because of the breaks, and sometimes it's hard to pick up, that really good conversation when you come back and have it be the same amount of energy into it.
Very hard.
Yeah. And I can imagine too, it's also hard sometimes to keep your guests not from just continuing their stream of consciousness while you're in between the break.
And a lot of them try to carry it through the break. Right? Which makes it even more difficult.
Yeah.
So it makes it kind of tough too.
If we have an opportunity, well, on Monday, I'd mentioned something about in the chat about the Clawed Beasts of the Ohio happening on the same day as the Hopkinsville Goblins. They were asking about it in chat again tonight. If we have a chance, if we get to the end and we got a window of time, we
can get right into it right off the bat.
Okay.
Where's the comment there?
It's way up in the chat, like towards the maybe 20 minutes ago. Before we started talking about the fake disclosure release.
All right.
Grandizer 12 is who made the post. I can't see what time it was made, but they tagged me and it's in all caps.
Is that Grandizer did that?
Yeah.
Grandizer, repost that question if you don't mind. Dave Scott, the original creator of After Hours. That's right. That is right.
So I got this book. Well, rather, I had this book on my shelf, and I don't remember buying it, but it was on my shelf. And so now I'm going to read it to see what it's about, but I don't know where I got it from. It's quantum consciousness. Like it looks really interesting.
By who?
Peter Smith says he's the president of the Newton Institute, is now the director of the Newton Legacy, the founder of the Institute for Quantum Consciousness, and the creator of the hypno-energetics modality. So I don't know. Somebody must have given it to me. He lives in Australia, so it'd be hard pressed to get him on the show. But yeah, it looks really interesting. But yeah, it's like one of those weird things. You just have stuff in. You ever have that where you just some book or something ends up on your shelf and you don't know where it came from?
Dude, half my books are like that.
You probably have a lot of books from authors that want to come on the show.
I will say this. it got to the point that when, you know, you get community events going on, they're looking for giveaways. I would make sure that I would give them some of them away that were not autographed to me. Because I one of my little hidden things is for authors, when they actually used to give away books, was that I would keep the ones that were autographed to me, because I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Grandizer, for posting that. Mama Catherine, T-Bone ×2, and Pam Harris, thank you for the lovely super chats. Greatly appreciate your love and support. And we're coming back in like 20 seconds.
So you want to ask me a difficult question? Is that
what's that?
I said you want to ask me a difficult question now? Is that what you're saying?
I ask you a brutal question. Like there's 6 seconds to go. Here we go, brother. Here we go with the final half hour of Spaced Out Radio. It's a UFO report. The wizard, Josh Rutledge, filling in for a vacationing Grant Baker. And Josh, there's a great question from our audience member, Grandizer, in the last half hour. He says, when we last spoke, you mentioned about the Beast of Ohio incident happening the same day as the Hopkinsville Goblins incident. Can you get into that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll assume for just a little bit that maybe people don't know about either two of these, and so I'll tell you a little bit about them. So, the Beast of the Ohio, often called the Claude Beast of the Ohio, Claude with a W, not a U. His name is not Claude, but this some people were swimming in Evansville, Indiana, in 1955, and where they were swimming in the Ohio River. And the part of the river where they were swimming is only about 15 feet deep or so at that point. And so there was like a woman with her sister and her 2 kids. And she was just, kind of swimming out in the river there a little bit. And something all of a sudden pulled her under. And, like they, were freaking out. Her sister was like in a canoe or something, and she was trying to get to her. And then she came back up for a little bit, and then she got pulled, very, very movie scene type thing of, she came back up for a little bit, and then she got pulled under again. And then for like a few minutes, she was gone underwater. She finally came back up. And when she came back up and they got her to shore, she had these claws, these scratch marks, like claw marks down her legs.
Ouch.
Of three claw marks down her legs. So they called sheriff and they came out, not knowing exactly what was going on. And apparently they took some samples of some mud that was in these claws on her legs. And they tested that mud in a lab and found out that it came from a subterranean river that emptied into the Ohio, well down below the surface of the water. And it actually kept going, or it connected again on the other side of the river. So it was just very odd that, and she later described, when she was interviewed, she said it was hairy and claw-like. So this became known as the Claude Beast of the Ohio. Okay, this was again in Evansville, Indiana, and it happened on August 21st, 1955. Now, as a part of this is all early research when I was starting the podcast. As a part of the research, though, that I was doing for Hopkinsville Goblins case, I found out that these two events actually happened on the exact same day. So the Hopkinsville Goblin case, this family was basically terrorized by these little creatures that kept I guess, trying to get into their farmhouse. And they actually had a what do you call it, a sinkhole near their property, and so it's suspected that they may have come up out of that sinkhole. And they were described as being relatively, small, like maybe 3 feet or so tall. Their eyes would shine in the dark. The family like barred the windows and like pushed furniture up against the doors to try to keep them out. And they shot at these creatures because it's rural Kentucky and that's what you do. And so, but what was really strange is every time their bullets would connect with these creatures, it would ricochet off of them and make a dinging noise when it did so, like a bell noise whenever it would ricochet off. So these two seemingly unrelated events happened on the same day. And I find it very peculiar that, this clawed beast came out of a subterranean river. And for those that don't know, Kentucky is the epicenter, but then it branches out into Indiana, parts of Tennessee and Ohio. But the Mammoth Cave System is a massive cave system underneath the state of Kentucky. And like I said, it goes up into Indiana and over in Ohio and down into Tennessee. It probably goes elsewhere too, because it's just this massive system. And it's been speculated that the show Hellier that was out, or a couple like 5 years ago or whatever, their case was also connected to the Mammoth Cave system. And so it's just really interesting that all these things may have some sort of a connection to some subterranean, life forms that may exist. And here's these 2 cases that, taken, separately, looked at separately, you wouldn't think anything, but collectively happened on the same date. What's really also interesting, there's a case of the Loveland frog, which is up near Cincinnati, Ohio. That also, not the same month, but it was also happened in 1955, where these, man-sized amphibians got out of the Ohio River and crossed the road in front of a traveling salesman. And then again, supposedly again in 1972, these same kind of man-sized amphibian creatures crossed in front of 2 police officers. So just a lot of weirdness, high strangeness going on, I think, within the Mammoth Cave system.
Josh Rutledge, the UFO report continues right now. I mean, I love those stories. Why do you think we don't get anything good like that anymore?
I don't know. Maybe it's, we talk a lot about the taboo around the UFO stuff. And even though that taboo is kind of lifting on lights in the sky, it's still very, I think, in place for anything that's not lights in the sky. Abductions or contact experiences, channeling, beasts and things. I think it's still, very taboo to talk about those things. And so maybe that's why we don't really get a lot of those tales anymore. I know I was reading a book, or it was an audio book recently. Somebody was giving a tale or an account they had where like a 10-foot long panther-like creature crossed the road in front of them in Oklahoma. So I mean, they're still out there. They're just they probably show up in Reddit, and then a whole bunch of people in Reddit tell them that they're crazy and that they don't know what they saw, and then they go off and they never share the story again. I mean, social media, when it comes to this kind of stuff, social media can be incredibly harsh on people who have experiences and just want to share those experiences.
Well, I'm someone who would love to see more encounters like that. And I know it's getting more difficult because of the internet age. We don't get this romanticism that we had from a lot of these stories, like the Hopkinsville goblin story, or Roswell, or anything like that. We seem to have just everybody inundating everything with going on the internet so quickly now that we don't have time to sink our teeth into a good story like a Calvin Parker or a Travis Walton anymore.
Well, and I think it's also that, what it used to be a couple of years ago was a 24-hour news cycle. And now it's like the, 24-minute news cycle. So, maybe that's what you're getting at is that by the time something's posted, before it even has a chance to really make its rounds, something else has been posted that's more spectacular or whatever, and then we hang up on that. We miss the other thing. So, yeah, I think it's partly that. I think it's also partly because you think about all these different organizations that have spun up in the last 7 or 8 years are all about tracking UFO sightings. I don't even if somebody had a cryptid sighting, is there a place they can go to report that? There's BFRO.net for Bigfoot stuff, but is there some sort of a centralized, reporting system for anything that's just anything, or anything that's not UFO, or anything that's not Bigfoot? Because that's maybe something that's a gap that's missing, is people don't have a place to go and report those things and tell those stories in some sort of a centralized location. Maybe Dave, you need a report your experience button on Spaced Out Radio, and you don't care if it's UFO or a clawed beast, that tried to sell you a vacuum cleaner. You don't care. You just want the information. So it's
there is phantomsandmonsters.com.
Yeah.
Lon Strickler, which is a great one.
Yeah, that is a good one. But I mean, how many people know to go and do that? Unless they happen to tune into a podcast, for like your show or somebody else. I don't know. There's probably, every time somebody comes across an experience that somebody shared on some social media, they should probably drop a comment that says, hey, you should go submit that on phantomsandmonsters.com. Everybody in the community, let's push that. Let's push that.
Definitely.
Make it so.
We'll make it so. We can make that happen. Why not? That's what we do good here. Josh, Neil deGrasse Tyson coming out basically saying, show us the aliens.
Yeah.
Show us the aliens.
Yeah. I mean, he's very much, I think, of the mindset of, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Which, he's not wrong, and I think that's, that's the heart of what we, ultimately want to see. I think for most people, that is final disclosure of, show us the aliens. I just don't think it's going to happen. I think the only time we're going to see aliens the way that Neil deGrasse Tyson and others want to see aliens is on the aliens' terms.
I understand. Explain to our audience, because you're very knowledgeable on this. Explain to our audience why it's a lot harder to just bring it out rather than going by Neil deGrasse Tyson, and saying, hey, show us the aliens. That it's just not that easy.
No,
it should be, but it isn't.
I mean, I think that there's a strong kind of almost like an exopolitics that has to be established for us to start thinking about, okay, so if we kind of play it out, let's say that we bring out the aliens, regardless of their state, dead, alive, whatever, it doesn't matter. We bring them out, and somehow we're able to prove to, let's call it 60% of the population, that they're real. It's not an AI generated thing. It's not it's not a doll. It's not a dummy. It's the real deal. to 60% of the population. Now that's a big ask right there by itself, but let's just say we can. The follow-on questions that come from it, like it used to be, I think that most people would say, well, it would cause our religions to collapse, but I don't think that's the case anymore. I think the biggest potential impact is the follow-on question would probably be, where do they come from? How did they get here? And the answers to those two questions have some potential strong ramifications. Because if they come from outside of our planet, okay, does that mean that another planet within our solar system is habitable? Maybe, maybe not. If not, then they came from outside of our solar system. Now we know that there's no really close solar system. So how did they? So then it starts to bring into question, I think, a lot of energy related questions. Did they burn fossil fuels to get here? Like how did their ships work? How did their technology work? Did we only find their bodies, or did we find something else? Can we replicate their technology? Can we replicate their energy source? I think there is there would be a strong need to quickly develop some sort of an exopolitical structure of what does it mean to have neighbors who are not human.
The way it is approached through the government side of things, or the intelligence side of things, that it's way more difficult to explain. It's not just about where are they from, who are they, who's coming here. Do you think they are trying to complicate things because they are the government or the intelligence agencies? Or do you think that there is a genuine concern that maybe, just maybe, there are other reasons why they just can't come out and say that we're not alone?
I mean, part of it, I'm sure, is just the bureaucracy of getting somebody to say yes to just about anything in government. The stronger question that I would have on the intelligence agency or government question is, there's not just the U.S. government. Perhaps Canada knows the answer. Why haven't any officials in Canada come forward? Like, why is everyone waiting for the U.S. to be the first ones to wheel out the alien bodies?
I think it's because you guys, the American government especially, are the ones who kind of control the free world. Okay. And whether it's defense deals, whether it's the Five Eyes, whether it's NORAD, even going back, I know a lot of American people don't like NATO, but even getting into NATO, there are rules and regulations that they have to follow. And let's face it, the United States of America carries a very large stick compared to the rest. That's kind of the way it is. You guys are dealing with trees, and we're dealing with little billy clubs.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe that's all of it. Maybe it's a matter of, they're worried about the ramifications of, stepping out of line. The other thing I think that is a potential is, like I said earlier, the U.S. government just may not have the answers to any of those questions. They may have had things for 70 years and not have really any answers. If all you have is crash craft and deceased, bodies that are not human, but you've not able to, you've not been able to talk to anything because of a language barrier, because of a cultural barrier, whatever the case may be. We're not very good at getting information out of people without causing severe psychological damage to those people. As humans, we're just and especially our intelligence community It's just not very good at getting that kind of information out of people. So, not understanding the psychological nature of a non-human entity and trying to decipher and learn things about that entity, in a respectful way. I don't know if we have the capacity, if our intelligence community has the capacity to do so. I mean, that's the kind of the thing that I keep coming back to is, what if the government we expect to have the answers doesn't have the answers? And to admit that they don't have the answers would then call into question how much our government actually knows about what's going on at any given time or state. So I think, again, maybe it's one of those things where remaining silent and not showing your hand is the better action to take.
Could very well be. Could very well be. As we got about a minute and a half to go here before we have to start wrapping this up here on Spaced Out Radio. Wizard, when do you hear, or are you hearing, if and when there will be another drop of UFO files?
Yeah, I mean, I'm hearing that I'm hearing rumblings that there probably is going to be another drop. Like I said, Ryan Graves and a few others have said that there are more videos that are better than what's been released so far that have been cleared for release, and they haven't been released yet. So assuming Ryan Graves and others are in the know, I would expect that there are better videos coming. I hope so, because like we've talked about ad nauseum, what's been released thus far leaves a lot to be wondered about what the U.S. government actually knows about what's going on.
You're absolutely right, my friend. And you know what? It is one of those time will tell stories. What the time is and the time frame, we have no idea. What the stories of the videos will be, we have no idea again. But one thing is for certain, the WWE type promos, that the videos are out there. They're interesting. They're engaging. You're not going to believe what we hear and see. That continues. The propaganda towards it continues. And I think at this point, we can start calling it propaganda. And Josh, thank you so much for coming back on Spaced Out Radio. It's always great to have the Wizard on here with us. As we say hello to Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal. Rocking in the background with Little Brother is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio. Rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at work, at home, in your cars, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone in our chat rooms tonight. YouTube, Twitch, LGAP, Facebook, Spreaker, LinkedIn, the Space Travelers Club, and on X at hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Remember, this show is copyrighted by Spaced Out Radio and Bigfoot Broadcasting Limited. Thank you so much for choosing to share your evening with us, because together, my friends, we're watching. We own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Yes, the Woo train has docked for the night, but soon, my friends, we shall ride again. Your seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, we've got room for them too. Good night, everybody. Good job, Wizard.
Thanks, Dave.
Yeah.
If you if you need me on any other time, just let me know. I can usually accommodate. This time of year, it's a lot easier because it's 11 to 12 as opposed to 12 to 1 whenever time change happens again. So, but yep. And if you, if you ever want to have me on as just a guest, talk about the convergence enigma.
No way.
No way what?
Tell you got Filthy on Facebook, don't you?
I think so.
Just message him.
You cut out. What'd you say?
Just message him.
Okay.
Yeah. Wizard, you have to realize you got a free pass around here, buddy.
Okay.
You know?
I didn't know he was your booking agent.
You didn't?
No.
Oh, he's been my booker for, oh, goodness. Filthy's been my booker for almost 7 years.
Wow.
Yeah. That's why he's dirty. Filthy. Yeah.
Actually, I don't have him because he never accepted my request. It shows me when
I'll give him hell.
Do you want
next
name,
Wednesday?
it says cancel request.
All right. Do you want next Tuesday or next Friday?
What are those dates? Hold on.
23 or 26? Or do you want July 1st or 2nd? That's a Wednesday or Thursday.
Let's do the 26th.
All right. Putting you in.
Awesome. Thank you.
The Convergence Enigma.
Yeah, I'll give you some copy for it. It's basically looking at kind of what we talked about in a little bit around the Hopkinsville and the Clawed Beast, like how these things kind of seem to happen.
Yep.
Together.
Yep. I got you. We got you in, buddy.
All right, man. I appreciate it.
Got you in. I always have time for the wizard, man. Always. Appreciate you, buddy.
All right, man.
All
I
right.
appreciate you. All right. I'll
New
talk
York
to you
is
later.
going to be calling me pretty quick here. Tomorrow night on the show, Jessica Jones, the cryptid huntress, will be here, hunting Dogman in Kentucky. That's what we're talking about. Follow that up with our good friend, who will be with us? The extra small Lee Strauss after Jessica. And that will be your Friday night show. How cool is that? That's the way we do things around these parts. So thank you to T-Bone ×2, Mama Catherine, and Pam Harris for the wonderful super chats. We greatly appreciate your love and support of Spaced Out Radio. And we will see you all tomorrow night, everybody. Thank you for the love. I will be over on WABC here momentarily. So head on over there to the Red Apple Audio Network. We'll talk to you soon.
Stay healthy, my friend.
You too.
If you need bail money, give me a call.
Always, Dad. Take care.
You too.